everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, with Rabbi Chaim Coffman in Israel. It's always a joy to be with him. I know that they haven't completed daylight savings time yet in Israel. They will be doing that next week, but we have Passover next week, so we won't be broadcasting then. And I'm working with a new chroma key set, so this is my first attempt. Hugh might be a little bit off, but I'm playing around with it, and we're going to amp things up. It's always a joy to be with the rabbi and hear Torah coming out of the nation of Israel. And I believe Rabbi Coffman's still on. We're on our 9th session. I think it's our 9th session on Mishnah 2, Chapter 5. It's always an exciting time. The lesson's been getting great. So let's just tune right in and see how the rabbi's doing. Rabbi Coffman, always good to be with you, sir. You're looking good. Everything's looking good. Stage is yours, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here. We're, deep in the middle of Clorox. Everything smells like Clorox because, busy cleaning. So, everybody by next, Friday have to be ready. Certainly have to be ready for Passover because Passover comes next Saturday night. So you have the benefit of not listening to us. The week after, we should be good to be at the end of Passover. Definitely we should be good, but I don't think we're still going to finish this Mishnah. We're still in the 2nd chapter and the 5th Mishnah. And we're talking about don't make a statement that can't be easily understood on the ground that it will be understood eventually. So we saw how careful a person has to be when it comes to social media and anything you're going to put certainly on social media, that you have to be extremely careful, and whatever you're going to say, whatever you're going to give over should be understood, right? You shouldn't have people second guess, especially if a person's a rabbi giving over information. The information should be 100% clear, right? It doesn't make sense the person's going to speak in Kabbalah and in other things going to be way over someone's head, which makes absolutely no sense at all. A person's going to be totally lost. Maybe the person themselves be totally lost giving over the information, right? We've definitely seen that, unfortunately. But, again, you don't bite off. You certainly don't bite off more than you can chew. No. And let's go a little bit further here. We did explain about making, your statement absolutely clear, right? So we mentioned, or I don't remember if we mentioned or not, but we're going to mention now the famous Abarbanel. The Abarbanel lived in the 1400s, right? Got thrown out with the people of Spain, the Jews of Spain, right? In the late 1400s, right? King Ferdinand and Isabella. He was a Ministry of Finance. I'm not sure everyone, realized that, but he was a unbelievable rabbinic scholar, no question. And the Abarbanel says that a person should never make the mistake and say something that won't be heard. Right? We spoke last week. There's an idea.
That won't be heard.
There's an idea which is, a little bit hard to understand, which we tried to explain, which is a person should be careful even thinking certain things. Why? Because if you think it, at some point, it could come up, right? And we mentioned by this anti-Semite, right? We went into all that. By this anti-Semite place of Miami Heat, right? We made this, anti-Semitic slur, right? We mentioned Mr. Edelman's gonna, have Shabbat dinner with him. We're not gonna go down there, right? Because I already blasted that last week, right? So you got to be careful, and the novelty here is you got to be careful what you think, because you never know in the deep recesses of a person's soul when it may come out. So comes along the Abarbanel, and the Abarbanel says, okay, what does it mean over here? That a person shouldn't make the mistake and think, it's not going to be heard. Why? Where does he bring a proof from? He brings a proof from none other than King Solomon himself. King Solomon says at the end of Ecclesiastes, he says, chapter 13, verse 12, comes along Ecclesiastes, or who's known as King Solomon, and he says the sum of the matter, when all has been considered, fear God keep his commandments. That is man's holy duty, right? So in other words, all things in the end are going to get hurt, right? But let's go a little bit deeper. What does that mean? It means that on the day of judgment, all the words a person has said, God is going to judge exactly what came out of a person's mouth, right? In other words, there are two angels, as the Talmud says, follow us wherever we go, that are recording just like we're recording right now. And a person can never say, I never did it. They can't say, well, this never happened. Why? Because it's being recorded, right? Everything we say is definitely being recorded. So if it's being recorded as a person, any person, if you've ever seen anyone tell over their story about having an out-of-body experience, what's the first thing they see? They see their life flash before their eyes, right? Every last thing, every last thought, right? As we've mentioned many times, when you thought it was safe to read National Geographic in the bathroom, wappo, what do you mean? What do you mean that's forbidden? What do you mean I got to think other things? Whatever the case is. But everything a person is not going to be able to say, I did not do it. Right? In other words, got to be careful what we say anytime, any place. Got to be careful what we think. Right? So I'll take it one step further. It's also brought down that a person in this world only has a certain number of words. Right? In other words, it's all measured. It's all totally measured. And once a person hits a certain amount of words, God says, okay, you had enough, and that's it. Now, a person can have 1 billion words, 500 million, 3, whatever. But if a person speaks stupid things, etc., that gets added into the, into the amount. So I'll tell a little bit of a scary story. There was somebody on a festival, a Jew, on a festival, in mid-sentence. He's saying, how beautiful is this roast or whatever the person said. That was it. That was the last word. Killed over and died. Right? Massive heart attack. Or whatever it was. Had a stroke, heart attack, whatever it was. But that definitely shows a person is going to only has a certain amount of words. Right? So we have to use our words effectively. We can't waste words, right? We certainly shouldn't waste words, but we're given a certain amount. So therefore, a person is going to get judged, right, for what comes out of their mouth, whatever they say, whatever their actions are. So when a person gets in front of God after 120 years, and either God's going to say, did you learn my Torah, or were you honest in business, right? That's a good one for most people. Were we honest in business, etc., and we're going to get judged for what we did, right? For good or for bad. The one thing we're not going to be able to say is I didn't do it. But imagine one aspect of hell, right, which I sort of spoke about last week on Tanakh Talk, about was the fact, or is the fact that that when a person gets judged, they have to admit what they've done, right? So when a person understands their pure soul and they understand what's going on and what's going on right now, the embarrassment of doing anything wrong, can affect a person like you take a needle and put it in the skin, right? That's the pain. So you say, well, is hell a physical thing? How does a spiritual being, how does the soul feel the pain, right? One aspect of that pain, right, is what is embarrassment, right? That embarrassment can last eternity, can last, tens of thousands of years, in the spiritual world. And a person, that becomes a person's way of atonement. One aspect of what hell is. Forget about, the fire, the pain, and all that, right? So one aspect, again, one. I don't want people saying, oh, he said there's no such thing as hell. I didn't say that, right? Let's make clear. Let's make absolutely clear, right? The bottom line is that, a person's going to get punished for what they've done, but embarrassment, right? Embarrassment itself can atone for many, many things, right? That can be, instead of, a person, is going to get other punishments as well, but embarrassment can take away a tremendous amount. And no one wants to go through this. Nobody wants the embarrassment. by that time it's already too late, right? But the embarrassment in a certain way is good because that means the punishment coming later is going to be less to a certain extent. Why? Because some of what the person has done, right? Some of the things that a person's done wrong, what's going to happen? That's going to be wiped away because of the embarrassment the person's going through now. Is that going to wipe everything away? No. Is it going to wipe some of it? Could definitely wipe some of it. But imagine a person got caught doing something. Now, we're very good at saying, this is not what it seems. It's not really what it means. Doesn't really matter I had my hand in the cookie jar. Doesn't matter I ripped off, 20 people, 50 people, whatever it is. But you have to understand the circumstances and whatever. No, right? There is no such thing over here as circumstantial evidence. You are guilty as charged, right? There's nothing to talk about. There's no way to squirm out of it. You did it. Now, could be. Person as a soul is going to have a claim, right? They'll make that claim in front of God, and God can say, yeah, okay, I buy it. I'll erase this. Or God's going to say, you had your hand in the cookie jar. That's exactly what it was. Don't pass go, don't collect 200. You're going to pay, right? You are absolutely going to pay the price. So it means over here that on the day of judgment, right, could be in this world also, that a person says something and they're going to be taken a task, right? They will be taken a task. They won't be judged necessarily by God right now. They could be judged by someone else, right? And I had something, I'll just give an example. I had something I said to somebody many, many years ago, right? Probably more than 25 years ago. Now, the subject doesn't really come up that often, right? But I said something and I said, I feel like X. I'm not going to say what it was, but I said, I feel like X. I didn't say I am X, right? There's a major difference.
Yep.
Major difference. So what did the person say? What did the person hear? The person heard, you feel like X. But that's not what I said. So they kept saying the same thing over and over again. But this is what you said, but I didn't. But this is what you said, but I didn't. Right? And that argument, whenever it comes up, hasn't come up in a while, right? But that argument, I will never, ever win. Why? Because the person, this person and other people have selective hearing. Since they have selective hearing, they'll say, oh, you said this, but I didn't. Right? So we have to be careful, not only what we say to others and how it's going to get judged in the next world, what about what's going to get judged today? Right? In other words, if a person says something, and let's say somebody misquotes it, you didn't say what you said, but someone misquotes it and it causes damage. Right? So now, what are you going to... Now, the other person, this is Lashon Hara, obviously, but then the person will say, hey, I heard that you said this. Okay, you heard wrong, because I didn't say that. I said this. I didn't say that. I said this, right? And that can cause damage. That can cause tremendous damage because people are going to hear, oh, you spoke badly against me. You really said this. No, I didn't say that. I had a conversation with somebody many years ago. They made a very disgusting statement, and I called them on it, and they denied it. They denied they didn't see it, so I say it. So I said, I'm not senile. My ears still work pretty well. I said, you just said this. They said, no, I didn't. They denied it. They absolutely denied. I caught them in what they said. They just weren't careful what they said. Not only weren't they careful, they didn't take responsibility for what they said. So what are you getting so upset about? I didn't say that.
Nope.
I said, but you did. And what you said is offensive. So they denied it. So they totally denied it. So, that can be direct. That can be indirect. But there are certain things a person may say. Forget about the action. Right? The action's another thing. Right? But a person could say something and it can come, months later, days later, whatever it is, it could come back and bite you. Right? Why? Because you said it and you have to be careful. Right? You have to be careful what comes out of your mouth. Not only do you have to be careful, right? Obviously, if someone's a leader, right? You got this thing with Biden now, got himself in a whole pickle, without getting into current events, right? Calling Mr. Putin a liar. Wow, that ain't going to be good for Russian and American relations, is it? Nope. Okay, so, that's certainly not going to be good. But, didn't he say it? If he
The
did say
Dems already dug their own grave. It's
right.
terrible.
If he said it, he's an idiot. If he said it behind closed doors, nobody hears him. It's one thing unless someone squeals on him, right? But on the other hand, if he says it and it gets out there, right? How many idiots out there, we've mentioned this ad nauseum, get caught on video, right? I mentioned that last week. Get caught on video doing certain things. They don't know the video's running, or they don't care, or whatever. The thing goes viral. No more contract, right? That's it. They kill themselves. They kill themselves in the process, right? So, Lashon Hara is bad even if the other person, even doesn't damage them, right? Even if the other person never hears about it, right? Doesn't really matter. The point is the person said it can cause damage. So our words, our words are holy. We certainly have to be careful, right? There are things we could say. For instance, Jews could forbid things on themselves, right? They can make vows, right? They can certainly make vows. And it's better, certainly just as a side point, to make a vow and uphold the vow. Rather, it's worse to do that than never make a vow, right? Because why am I worried over here? I'm worried if a person makes a vow, you're not going to be able to uphold it. But what about the person that does, right? You can have someone that says something, makes a vow, whatever it is, forbids whatever it is to him or to someone else or whatever the case is, and they do that and they fulfill it. But the problem is most people probably won't, right? They'll make a vow. They won't say bli neder. They won't say without a vow, because otherwise, if they forget, they don't uphold it. It's almost like taking God's name in vain, right? Because it's like you're sanctifying something. We don't use that language, right? But the language really is, it's like you sanctified something to the temple, right? Even though, we're not using that type of language today, right? But that's the severity. And if that is a severity and I'm not going to uphold it, then it's 10 times better never to make the vow, right? Because, what would I have thought? I would have thought originally, okay, you made the vow, you upheld it, what's the problem, right? Why is that such a bad thing? Because most people are going to forget. Since most people are going to forget, they're not going to uphold it, so it's better never to make it, right? The difference of opinion, certainly in the Talmud, and the conclusion is that it's better never to make it, right? Because otherwise a person certainly may forget. So whatever a person says, even behind closed doors, even if no one else is listening, or they say it in confidence of somebody else, right? That's never supposed to be repeated. And we'll get there. The Mishnah speaks about this also, right? But let's say the person never repeats it, but it got out there, right? The words of a person are going to get judged. Whatever we say, we have to be careful, right? 100% we have to be careful. You just have no idea, what the damage could be. And even if it doesn't do any damage at all, the fact you said something that you shouldn't have said, maybe a person cursed, maybe a person said other things that they shouldn't have said. Even the novelty here is, even if it doesn't affect anybody else, that doesn't matter. The fact is, it shouldn't have been said. So what about a Noahide, right? We're talking to Noahides here, right? Or maybe Jews in training, whatever you want to call them. Either way, right? Even for them, you say, what about the laws of Lashon Hara? The laws of Lashon Hara, we've mentioned many times, don't apply. Why don't they apply? Because there are certain things that don't make logical sense according to the Torah. For instance, if I know something to be true, right, I'm still not allowed to repeat it, even if everybody knows it. Now, you ask most secular Jews and non-Jews, they'll think that's crazy. If everybody already knows it, and it's true, and it's verified, then why repeat it? Unless, if you have no purpose. If there's no purpose, you can't repeat it. If there's a purpose, okay. Right? So by a non-Jew, I would say as a moral imperative, right? I spoke a whole, hour about a moral imperative, on Tanakh Talk, in my videos about Noahide. If it's a moral imperative, doesn't mean I'm obligated to do it, right? Doesn't mean the non-Jew is obligated, right? But if you would ask most people, does this make you a better person? If a person's at work and people are speaking about somebody else, whoever it is, and you join the conversation, right? You're part of the conversation. Now, you'd have to ask yourself every single day, every second of every single day, at least that I'm awake, maybe when I'm asleep, right? Am I going in the right direction, right? Am I going up, meaning I'm serving God properly, or I'm not, right? So if I'm speaking negatively against someone, what's someone going to say? Person deserves it, right? The person's a yutz. The person's a whatever, fill in the blank. And let's say 100% they deserve it. Who says I should be speaking about that person? Who says I have to go so low to say, oh, look at this person and look what they do? So why do I have to put myself in the mud, right? Why in the world, speak about politics? What do you think? All these politicians are squeaky clean, right? We have more than 30 parties in Israel. One more corrupt than the other. The three biggest corrupt, politics, countries when it comes to politics are Japan, Italy, and Israel, right? Post World War II, not necessarily in that order, right? So in other words, none of these people are squeaky clean, but people love to speak about politics, right? What do you say about this? It's all Lashon Hara, right? I don't see anything where people say anything when it comes to politics. It's all Lashon Hara, right? Because if you're trying to boast yourself or build up somebody else, what does that mean by definition? You're knocking someone else out, right? You're totally knocking someone else out, right? So therefore, you got to be careful with that. Certainly with other things, listening to, talk radio about politics, talk radio about sports. That's all Lashon Hara. Oh, this athlete, he's getting paid this much. This guy's not worth it. He's a prima donna.
Are you serious?
What is that? That's all Lashon Hara. That's all Lashon Hara. Whether the person is or not doesn't really matter. It's not for us to judge, right? Doesn't matter if he's a Jew or a non-Jew, right? We'll make it easy. Even if, last year he had a stellar year. Let's say he's a football player. The years before that, it was okay. Sometimes better, sometimes not. And all of a sudden, this guy has a banner year. And what's he going to say? I want to get paid. I deserve the money. Come on. I had 100 catches, 1,500 yards, whatever, over 1,000 yards in receiving. Come on, look what I'm doing. I'm smoking everybody over here, right? So people are going to say, nah, he's injury prone. Nah, he only had one really good year. The other years weren't so good. Why should we pay him? So what do these analysts do? They sit there and, they look at every nook and cranny. Does deserve it, doesn't deserve it. What about things he said? Didn't say. They bring in all kinds of things, right, to make it interesting. 99.9% of all of that is Lashon Hara. It's pure Lashon Hara. Because all you're doing is you're speaking against this person, whether he deserves it or he doesn't deserve it. Now, let's say, just for argument's sake, while I'm on this roll, let's say they're praising him. Let's say they're saying, yeah, this guy's got another good 5-6 years, and he could do this, and he could do that. And let's say there are people listening, and there are some people that hate this guy. They just hate him. They don't like him for whatever reason, right? And they start saying, nah, this guy's a bum. He's a bum. Way back when, when going to Celtics games, when I was a kid. So, who were the Celtics' biggest enemy, in the 80s was the Lakers, right? It was Bird against Magic. Right, so now one
Sixers,
of the, now Sixers also, but I'm thinking about something, specific here, where one of the players happens to be, I think, one of the general managers for the Lakers today, is none other than Mitch Kupchak, right? He was a forward, wasn't really that good, whatever, but I guess he had to be good enough to play in the NBA, right? So I remember going to a game, one of these Lakers games, and there's a fan screaming out, "Cupcake!" Because his name is Kupchak, right? They're making fun. They're like, "Cupcake, you couldn't hit the side of a barn." Like, Cupcake, whatever. Skin. Right? So imagine, so okay, that's already forbidden. Probably even for a non-Jew. Certainly not a good character trait to have. Where you sit there, okay, it's all part of the fun. You're going to say you don't mean it, but keep in mind one thing, right? If you excessively praise someone, these are in the laws of Lashon Hara. If you excessively praise someone, let's say, it means in the presence of others. You're excessively praising somebody, and there's somebody there that doesn't really like the person you're praising. So what happens? The person says, I don't think this person's so great. I don't think they're so righteous. Whatever. And you're going to, so the person who said it transgresses the prohibition of Lashon Hara. Now, you're going to say, but he didn't say anything bad. He didn't say anything bad at all, right? So why is it a transgression it's called Avak Lashon Hara. It's called the dust of Lashon Hara, but it's still maybe on a lower level, but it's still Lashon Hara. Why is it Lashon Hara? It's Lashon Hara because you caused someone else to say something bad against this person. But I didn't say it. I didn't even give any intuition of anything bad. What were you doing? You were praising the person to no end. So the halacha is that a person has to be extremely careful, even praising somebody, because if you praise somebody in the presence of others, and now someone may say something derisive against the person you spoke about, you get the transgression. Why? Because you should have been a heck of a lot more careful. That someone there could have been somebody that did not like what you had to say or did not like this person. You had no intention for anyone to say anything bad, right? But you got to be careful what you say over here. Yeah, question.
Yeah, Rabbi, I need to understand how this relates to, management. Let's just say, because managers often, and in this day and age, we get a lot more people going for education, getting higher degrees in order to get better positions. When it comes to management, they have to do a lot of staff assessment. They have to do a lot of conversation around, what are we going to do with this person? But then I've seen it go too far where they start to treat people like assets and they're just rented mules, and there's a lot of derogatory behavior in there. But in reality, when it comes to management, I mean, is there not a line that is acceptable, to do a personal review of somebody's?
No, that's a different issue. When it comes to personal review, let's say, a person has to make a decision. Should we keep this person? They have to evaluate.
We got to ask a few employees.
Right. Or they, every so often you do an evaluation.
Yeah. Maybe we need to
add. See what the person.
Sure.
You see what the person's been doing. How they've been performing. That doesn't necessarily have to do with the. Yeah. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to ask people. Right. But they want to. Every so often. They want to see. So they have to evaluate the person in a way where, they're looking at the facts, right? They could ask people, is this person doing, X or whatever. Now there is an issue. If it's something, let's say, the person's doing something wrong, right? Or let's say the boss thinks the person's up to something and you have information. Could get this person basically canned or not. Now, if the boss thinks or knows you have the information, and the boss says, okay, I need this information, as part of my evaluation, right? I need to know, is this person doing this or doing this? Now, there's a problem. What's the problem? Because what you're going to say is derogatory to the other person. Now, right. If it's derogatory to the other person, that's Lashon Hara. Now, if the boss comes back, well, we'll give another case in a second, but if the boss comes back and he says, I know you have this information, and let's say you admit that you do, and he says, I need this information. If you don't give me this information, then I'm going to fire you. Right? Now, let's say that would happen. So what does the person have to do? Right? The person has to give up their job. They have to say, I'm not giving over the information. Right? I refuse to give over the information. So if the boss comes back and says, okay, I'm giving you one last chance, otherwise I'm going to fire you, you have to be willing to give up your job. I mean, you have to give up your job. You're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara against this person in order that the boss is going to fire him. Now, what happens if the information is causing the owner a loss, right? Something you would have no idea about, right? Right? The private joke. Anyway, that that let's say people were stealing. People were stealing from the owner. Do you have an obligation? To squeal on them, right? To say something. Let's say the boss doesn't know, and he doesn't have a clue. And
a popular phrase here, Rabbi, a popular phrase in the last decade is thrown under the bus. Okay. And you get in business and people legitimately plan scenarios and throw somebody under the proverbial bus. In other words, it's worse than Lashon Hara. They're literally going out to, wreck a person's reputation.
I'm not talking about, the scum of the earth. I'm talking about people on the up and up where now they're worried about, the integrity, of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that the fact that the boss is unaware of the fact that he's losing money because these people are doing X, Y, or Z. Right now, so the question is, okay, that's a different scenario. That's a different scenario because you're warning the boss against loss. You tell me it's Lashon Hara, right? Really, it's Lashon Hara against people, right? However many people is involved. Let's say it's only one, right? We'll make it easy. It's only one person. And that person, if you squeal on them, they certainly could lose their job, right? So that's a little bit difficult over here. Because on the one hand, the boss is losing money, right? The company's losing money because someone's stealing. On the other hand, how are you allowed to say something against this person's Lashon Hara? So now there's a caveat. What's the caveat? There's damage being caused, right? The damage being caused is a financial loss. That would be similar to saying, okay, somebody, you caught someone in the act of being a pedophile, let's say. Right? God forbid. Right? Or whatever. Someone stealing, whatever. You say, well, I can't turn them in. And it is a big transgression. Even another Jew, to turn over another Jew to the police. But if they're being a mazdik, if they're causing damage, that goes out the window. Right? So you have somebody who steals. Someone, God forbid, is a pedophile. It's a mitzvah to turn them over. It's an absolute mitzvah to turn them over because they're going to cause damage. They're already causing damage. Right? We know that. So in this case, we would say this person's causing damage. He's stealing from the boss. You know that he's doing it, or she's doing it, whoever's doing it. So you have a right to say something. You absolutely have a right to say something. That's not a problem with Lashon Hara over here, right? Because you're saving someone from damage, right? But the thing is, when you tell it over, so there are certain conditions. There are certain conditions. One of the conditions is that you have to have seen it yourself. You cannot rely on what someone else says.
Hearsay, yeah.
Right? Hearsay doesn't go. You cannot rely on what someone else says. You have to know firsthand, this is what the person's done. Second thing is, I have to say exactly what happened. I'm not allowed to add anything over here.
Or embellish.
Right? I have to tell it the way it is. I cannot ad lib. Right now, some people, as you mentioned, right, a common thing of throwing someone under the bus, they don't just tell what happened usually. They usually say other things as well. They did this also. They did the other thing. They don't just say, oh, look what this person did over here. They go further than that. Right? I'm not going to say everybody. But usually if something is being told, what's the real issue of Lashon Hara? It's a lie. It's not the truth, right? Lashon Hara can also be when someone told the truth. But Lashon Hara in general is when a person lied, right? So therefore over here, what do we have? We have a person who may have told what happened, but in the process of telling what happened, they added a few things. Right? They added a few things that didn't happen. Right now, when you add things that didn't happen, so that for sure is Lashon Hara. Right? That for sure is Lashon Hara because you're lying. You're not telling exactly what happened. But to save someone from future loss. So now let's say someone gives us information. Someone tells us about somebody that's doing this, that, and the other thing. Now, even if they have evidence, they heard it firsthand, a person cannot necessarily believe it straight out. Otherwise, they're accepting Lashon Hara. But a person is allowed to guard themselves. Right? In other words, this person, let's say this person's an insurance agent. Right? But he's not on the up and up. Right? Someone has told you, or other people have told you, it's been corroborated, this person's not on the up and up. So I can guard myself against the person. Potentially, I can warn others not to do business with this person because he's a crook. But you have to, you need clear-cut evidence. It's not enough, just to hear it secondhand, right? You need clear-cut evidence. So even if you heard it secondhand and a person hears it third-hand, they are allowed to guard themselves. They're not allowed to believe it outright, right? They're not allowed to believe it outright because that's a Torah prohibition of accepting Lashon Hara. But you're going to say, but the person's not guilty of speaking Lashon Hara. It's still Lashon Hara, but he's got a purpose over here, right? The purpose is he's warning other people, right, against what this other person does, right? So, just on this topic there are all kinds of things that a person, could be withheld information because a person may say, you know what, I don't want to give over this information. It's Lashon Hara, right? But let's say when it comes to making a match between a man and a woman, right, to get married, and a person knows, the potential, husband or wife has mental issues, right? They're on medication, right? They're on antidepressants, let's say, right? The question is, okay, that information has to be given over. The only question is when. Because if you give over the information at the very beginning, you don't tell the other person at the very beginning. So there are rabbinical authorities that say you don't have to, because let's see if they're compatible. Let's see if they like each other. If they don't like each other, you don't have to give over the information, right? But after, let's say, by the third date or fourth date, that information should be given over. Medical information has to be given over, right? If at some point, if it's not given over and the person finds out later, it's a big problem, right? I know somebody, got married and the other side did not say at all that, their child had mental issues. Now, when the person found out that, their spouse has some sort of mental issues, and it was sort of downplayed a little bit, at the end, it wasn't something minor, right? It was something major, right? And this person, I think, ended up getting divorced because, he'd been lied to, totally lied to. Now, what could the other side say? Well, we don't want to give over that information because it's Lashon Hara. What do you mean? You just messed up somebody in the process. You totally messed them up. You have to give over that information at some point. At some point, if you give it over at the beginning, probably a person's not going to date them, right? But at some point, if they like each other, you have to give over information. To be
transparent.
That is irresponsible, right? But people throw this out, and the Avos Chaim has a whole thing written about shidduchim, about making matches between men and women, what you're allowed to say, not allowed to say. This is irresponsible. 100% irresponsible. It's not the first time I've heard such a case. So when a person's looking into the other side, you have to dig. You have to try and dig and get as much information, as possible. It doesn't mean you find out everything. But in the end, you want to be able to make a clear-cut decision, right, based on the information you have. Now, if something's really hidden, nobody tells you, and you only find out later, it could be you could say, well, it's what God wanted. This is what was meant to be, right? Or there could have been other repercussions why the people are not going to give over this information, right? But at the end of the day, again, it's irresponsible. 100% irresponsible. You mess up people's lives. You don't have a right to hide behind Jewish law when you don't know what it means and you don't know what it says, to say, it's Lashon Hara. I don't want to be over 36 transgressions in one shot. But if you don't give over the information, you transgress Coffman's 615th commandment of don't be a moron, right? That is just utterly ridiculous, but it happens. It absolutely happens. I'm not saying on a wide scale. It can certainly happen. Yeah, question.
Rabbi, maybe along these lines, I'm hoping you can help clarify. I had made a comment the other day on a Noahide post that had to do with Genevas Da'at, theft of knowledge or theft of mind.
Right.
Does that not play into Lashon Hara if somebody's deceiving another person?
Well, that's a different issue. That's an issue of what we could call either onus devarim, that a person is misleading, let's say selling something, right? They're misrepresenting what it is, right? In other words, they sell something. I know a friend of mine, bought his wife something. It was a shirt or blouse or whatever, and it had like some gold trimming. They sold it for more, and for more money because it had this gold trimming, and one wash came out. Right, so that's obviously misleading, right? You're certainly not allowed to mislead. And again, if you know if we know somebody's misleading, this happened to me. So I'll tell you what happened to me. I was in South America, in Chile, Santiago de Chile, for a certain amount of time. Still not sure what my soul was doing there. Not clear at all. But when I was there, it was known. Yeah. It was known that there was a rabbi there selling or giving rabbinic supervision to wine, and at some point had somebody there watching the wine at one point that did not keep Shabbos. Now, somebody doesn't keep Shabbos in public has the status of a non-Jew. Non-Jews are not allowed to watch kosher wine, right? That makes the wine not kosher, and I'm not going to go into all the details. That makes the wine not kosher, but everyone's afraid to stand up to this. It's
a strict position.
This had reputable rabbinic supervision, and everybody knew it. Everyone's afraid to say anything, right? But this is being sold all over the world, right? So I called up my Rebbe. I said, I have this information. I know that it's been corroborated by a number of people. So I said, what do I do? And he said, you have to call it in. 100%, you have to call it in. And I didn't take it as far as I could have, but in my process of teaching in the school, I got fired, and they refused to pay me, what we call, I forget what you call it in English. They owed me money, for for a year, for more than a year. They refused to pay unless I signed a document saying that I wasn't going to make any more statements about rabbis in the community. Right? Damages. They owe me damages. Right? So I said, this is extortion. Now, this is an Orthodox Jew. Right? I said, this is extortion. He said, the person paying the money is not going to pay you unless you sign this. And I threw it in his face. I was like, you're a joke. And I said, your father-in-law's a bigger joke. I said, what do you think you're going to buy me over here? I said, you guys are corrupt to, the nth degree. I said, what is this, a mafia? You piece of scum. It's what they were. But I didn't take it that far. Right? I should have taken it much further. Right? So in the end, I asked my Rebbe what to do. I said, listen, I'm stuck in this country now. They're not going to pay me. I said, so what do I do over here? So basically he said, sign a document in front of two other people, two other witnesses, two other kosher witnesses, and tell them you are signing under duress. That you're going to sign this to get your money under duress, and that if you ever have a chance to sue them, you're going to sue them for the money, which I never did. Right? You can sue them for defamation. This is total defamation. Right? So I had different reason why I didn't do it, but this is what I signed, whatever, and in the end I left and I got paid. The thing was not this person who gave rabbinic supervision, he started blaspheming against me in public. He's draining my blood. He's taking away he's doing this and he's doing that, and it's lashon hara and blah blah blah. And he said, I'm not even making money from this. Right? And the head of the school tells me with the same mouth, and he says, what are you doing trying to take away someone's livelihood? Right? So he's telling me this guy's getting paid. The guy himself is telling me lying, and he's telling me he's not getting paid. He's not making it. So who's telling the truth? Who's telling the truth over there? One of them is lying. One of them is obviously lying. Right?
Oh,
so now,
so many scenarios.
So now what's the issue? The issue is someone is giving rabbinic supervision to wine that can't be drank by Jews. Forbidden to be drunk by Jews. Right? It's being sold all over the world. So the best thing I could do was warn anybody I knew not to touch any wine with this rabbinic supervision that comes out of Chile. Right? Unless I know rabbinic supervision.
I live in a wine region, and I know how that would affect.
Unless it's known that someone else is giving rabbinic supervision, right? Or it's a different rabbinic supervision, or whatever the case is, right? So now, is there anything worse than that? That's obviously misrepresentation. I could list you stories, a number of stories, right? Someone goes to a great rabbi, and this person's an Orthodox Jew. I don't know how Orthodox. Goes to this great rabbi, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, of blessed memory, and he says, I have certain quality of material. I have grade A, grade B, and grade C. Now, a friend of mine heard the question. He was there when the question was asked, right? So I heard the second hand. He heard it firsthand. So he said, I have grade A, grade B, and grade C. He said, can I sell it as grade A? right? So the rabbi goes, I don't understand the question. So, of course, he says it a little bit slower. I have grade A, grade B, grade C. And the rabbi stops him. He says, I understood the question. I'm not deaf and I'm not an idiot. He said it's gezela. It's stealing, right? Or it's geneva, really. It's stealing. So he said, why do you think it's permissible to do this? Now, listen to the answer. The answer was, Rabbi, that's business. Now, does that mean that, a Jew is allowed to mislead, to misrepresent? A non-Jew is also not allowed to, right? That's called stealing, right? Stealing has a specific definition. You're taking something that doesn't necessarily belong to you, right? But the Torah says I'm not allowed to misrepresent. I'm not allowed, to say, okay, I'm going to sell you this orange, but it's really a banana, right?
Or
and I'm going to sell it for more
yeah.
because I'm telling you it's a banana, but it's really an orange, right? Now, if you get duped into it, you're stupid enough to believe the orange is a banana or vice versa. Okay, but if you can't tell the difference, right? One of the things Talmud says, the person had a slave, right? I'll give an example. You want to sell a slave, right? The only place I think it's legal to have slaves is probably changed by now. And international law was in Saudi Arabia, right? That might have changed. That law may have changed, right? Where you could do this legally. But let's say, in the time of the Torah, where, slaves, it was permissible to have slaves because someone stole, they had to live by somebody, they had to get rehabilitated. So a person has his slaves. Now, let's say someone's going to sell him, and he wants to get a higher price. So what does he do? So if the person's 52 years old or more, and he's got gray hair, can't imagine anyone I'm talking about, because I just got a haircut. I told the barber on Friday, and I said, take off as much white hair as you can. And he said, sir, if I do that, you won't have a face. And I was like, that's not the point. He goes, you won't have a face. You get it? I said, yeah, but I won't have white hair either. In any case, if you would take this white hair and color it, right? Make me look younger. Make me look like I was 25 or 30. Right? I'll take some steroids. I'll bulk up. I'll look 6'7", right? I'll bulk up over here, right? So they'll say over here, oh, look, this person's much younger. I can get a higher price. That's forbidden, right? That we're not allowed to do. And a male Jew, just as a side point, is not allowed to color their hair or their beard because that's what women do. Women are allowed to do that. They want to color their hair, make themselves look younger. They're allowed to do that. A man is not allowed to do that. That's what women do. In this other case, why is it forbidden? Because that's misrepresentation. You're taking a slave that's 53 years old. I just said 52. I aged him because I have a birthday coming up. Right? 52 years old. Right? And what are you going to say? No, really, he's 35. Right? Really, he's 35. Right? So what are you going to do? You're going to get $500 more because he's younger. Because he looks younger. That you're not allowed to do. Why not? That 100% is misrepresentation, right? I can't do that. I can't do that with a slave. I can't do that with clothing. I can't do anything to misrepresent, right? Certainly to misrepresent. And, what if the person, though?
Yeah, buyer beware mentality.
Gets duped? What if the person gets duped, right? So it certainly can ask for his money back, right? He's getting something where really the thing's a hunk of junk, but the person selling it like it's God's gift to the world over here. And therefore, he's going to sell for a heck of a lot more when the reality is it's not true. Now, when it comes to other things, just on this topic, what about you involved in real estate, right? So a person was also involved in real estate at one time. So a person can ask whatever they want for their house, right? For the house, their apartment, right? They can ask whatever they want. Doesn't mean they're going to get it, right? So how do we evaluate? This is just real estate 101 or 101A. How do we truly evaluate what a person's house is worth? So you go on the MLS, right, multiple listing service, and you see what things have sold for, not what they're selling for, what they have sold for in the last 3 months, right? 3 months, 6 months. So, right, then you take an average, right? You take an average, similar home, similar thing, wear and tear, more or less, and this is what it should be worth. You could get an appraisal. They'll tell you what it's worth. That's what they base it on. That's exactly what they base it on. Also, wear and tear. Now, someone wants to inflate the price. let's say it's supply and demand, right? The house isn't such a great house, but it's right next to a synagogue, right? So the price goes up exponentially, right? But the house, they could be selling the house for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 more American, not Canadian, because Canadian's not worth anything, right? American dollars over here. Maybe we'll put it in shekels.
We're over 80 cents now.
It's worth more than the dollar, but we're not going to go there. The point is they could sell it for more. Let's say they sell it for $80,000 more. They say, but that's not the market value, right? The person says, I don't care. This is what I'm selling it for. Are they allowed to do that? They're allowed to do that. They're not telling you what the value is. And they're saying, oh, we're going to sell it for we're going to sell it for we're going to misrepresent the value. If a person pays more for it, right, it's because of supply and demand, right? If the person is saying, no, it's really worth this, and you buy it for that, but the reality is you didn't do the research. Your real estate agent got an F, right? They didn't do their due diligence. That's not their fault, right? That's not the owner's fault. In other words, they don't transgress because you transgress the 614th commandment, and that is don't be stupid. So when you buy real estate, you have to do your due diligence, right? That's what you get a lawyer for. That's what you have a real estate agent for. They're going to tell you what it's worth, if there are any liens on the property, all these other things. Now, that's not misrepresentation, because if you buy it overvalued and you didn't do the research, the other guy's laughing all the way to the bank, right? He's laughing all the way because he says, oh, what an idiot. He bought it for a heck of a lot more than it's worth. So it could be the person had a reason why I wanted to buy more, buy it for more. But in the end, if he didn't do it, if he didn't do his research, and the guy sold it for a lot more than it's worth, and you can say, well, he's misrepresenting. It's not misrepresenting, right? Because what's my obligation? When I buy something, if you're buying something of value, a car, a house, bedroom set, like any of these things, you're going to do research, right? You're going to see what stores are selling. You're going to see what the discounts are going to be. You're going to look into it from a lot of different avenues before you're going to fork any money over, right? The same thing is going to be, we'll just make a slight difference here when it comes to spirituality, right? If someone's going to learn by someone and that person is actually going to charge money, right, is actually going to take money out of your pocket, that person most likely is going to do a heck of a lot of research before they go down a certain path. Why? Because anyone's coming out of Christianity, they know they've already been lied to. They know they've already been duped. They know these people are, false. So they're going to look into any rabbi. They're going to look at him like, with a fine tooth comb, and they're going to see if the person's really the real deal or not. And, a person, and I would tell people, you have to do proper research to see, what do other people say? Are they happy? This, that, right? But anything else, if a person's going to put money down on something, you have to know what you're getting yourself into. If you didn't do the research and you yourself get messed up, who do you have to blame? Nobody, right? All three of you, yourself, and yourself, right? That's the civil complex. If a person, let's say, give an example. Another example, a person did all the research, they bought a car. Right, a friend of mine bought a Renault. Don't ever buy a Renault. Right, someone bought a Renault, and the Renault is known. Right, if you do proper research, it's known. If anything, the electronic system goes, it's never the same. They just never fixed it properly. But this person didn't have a problem with that. He bought a car that was like 2 years old, maybe 3 years old. His entire engine went. The entire engine went. Cost him like $5,000 to fix the engine. Right. So what happened over here? So what happened was he got a lemon. He got a lemon. Now, if he didn't do the research and he had a problem with his electric system, right? And if he would have done the research, he probably would have found out, maybe, right? If he'd done the research properly, he would have found out that if there's ever a problem with the electric system, it's never the same. So if he bought it anyway and he says, I'll take my chances, okay. If he didn't look into it, and that's what happened. So it's not that the owner said anything. You got a lemon, right? You should have researched it. If you should have researched it and you didn't, shame on you, right? You made a huge mistake because now you're forking over a lot of money. And by forking over a lot of money, you don't do the research, right? And then you get burnt. You have no one to blame but yourself. If you did the research and something else happened, right? And they told you it's something that it's not, but you didn't expect that. Okay, that's another issue. But somebody's not allowed to sell something, mislead somebody in a way where they're not going to get what is said to be advertised. Question.
Yeah, you were bringing up, and I think you kind of covered it a bit there in the end. It's just when are we allowed to accept or have a sense of good faith in conduct versus bad faith? I mean, sometimes going out into the world, into certain markets, like you mentioned, the auto industry, it can be predatorial. You have to be prepared.
Real estate also.
But I spent 25 years almost in the auto industry, and
right.
Last decade did 12 years sales and management. The point being, I had enough of people walking through the door calling you a liar. Didn't matter. They were so tensed up when they walked through the door. It doesn't matter how honest, kind level you were. They called you a liar.
All these Joey Suzu commercials. You remember those Joey Suzu commercials? This car can outrun a speeding bullet. He's lying. This car can do. There are people in certain businesses, no question about it, have the status of being a liar, right? One of them are a car salesman. I mean, no offense.
Yeah, I saw my share.
Getting ripped off. Or go to a mechanic. Go to a mechanic. Find an honest mechanic. I'm not saying they don't exist, but there are plenty of people. You take your cars. Oh, you need this. Oh, you need that.
Flat rate is flat
you take it to someone else and they say, no, these brakes are fine, not a problem. Your tires are a problem. The person's lying to you. It's not so easy as well to find someone in these certain industries, 100% that are honest.
I just try to get to that point where people can function with and in good faith. Like I know, like New Zealand has good faith employment laws in place. I mean, employers are expected to act in good faith towards their employees. Things like that play into the factor of the atmosphere that people need to live in, and the countries that we all live in have such variances in local law. If you were raised, like you say, in the U.S., you can think back to the Wild West days in the mid 1800s or 1700s. I mean, it was every man for himself. It was like a survival of.
Well, let me tell you a story. When I was involved in real estate, so my job was to find undervalued properties, usually 20-30% undervalued, find sellers, and I would get a fee in the middle. I can't even tell you how many people refuse to sign non-disclosures. That's saying that they won't circumvent you for a $3,000 fee or a $5,000 fee. Yeah. Right? In other words,
nobody wants to be cornered. They live in a round room, so they don't get cornered.
Want to pay. They don't want to pay. They said, why should I pay you? I go, you find the deal. Right? I said, I'm the one who found the deal, so you find it. What do you need me for? Go find your own deal.
Oh, they probe you for information until they can track it.
The information is worth something. But again, anyone that refused to sign, I wouldn't deal with them at all. I said, it doesn't really matter what, if the paper's worth anything, you could get somebody in a court of law or not, right? But it's about honesty. Right. It's about integrity. Yeah. Now, most people who don't have a problem with it, they'll sign it straight away. Why? Because they want to make money. Because they themselves want to make money, right? And, and you should be paid. Good. But there were so many people, I just couldn't stand it. People wanted to circumvent you so they didn't have to pay your fee, right? And that's total dishonesty. Dishonesty. And there were plenty of people out there. And I got messed up of a deal once over Shabbos, over a festival, because someone else on the other side said, "Oh no, he decided he doesn't need his fee, or his fee's going to be a lot less." I never said that, but I couldn't answer because it was a festival. So then, 2 days later, I find out what happened. I said, I never said that. He said, no, this person said you did. So okay, I got the fee, whatever it was better than getting nothing, right? But there are plenty of people out there, that will slit your throat because they want to make more money. And we're not talking about in the time of a pandemic. This was not a time of a pandemic, right? This is before everything shut down in 2008. It was before that. It was well before that, right? Where people were still making good money in real estate, before everything got knocked around.
Oh, they still are here. Oh,
but it's crazy. It's absolutely insane what people are willing to do. So I thought, okay, maybe real estate is worse than any other profession. Then I heard people in other professions, no, in other professions can happen also, right? Because people want to make money and they don't care, right? As you mentioned before, Very true. They'll throw someone under the bus to make money. That's true. There are people out there, they don't care about integrity. They don't care about what their reputation is. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, right? If that means they have to screw you in the process, right? If they have to do that to you, throw you under the bus, okay, they'll do it. Even for a minute amount of money because they want to make more money. If you want to tell me I was on a big deal and I could have made $25,000, someone wants to get me out of the deal, I get it, right? Then it's a lot more money for them. That makes sense. But if it's a regular house, $250,000 house, you're going to make $3,000 to $5,000 commission, right? And the fact that, they're getting it, let's say 30% undervalued, right? So they already got equity. They got a good amount of equity, or they're going to flip it, or whatever they're going to do, right? So that $3,000 isn't worth it for them to pay. They got another house in their portfolio, right? And every time I heard this, it boggled my mind. I said, how many crooks can there be out there? And I was taught from someone who was relative, is honest, and he said that, don't go around trying to circumvent paying taxes, because if you're doing this right, you're making a good amount of money, pay taxes, right? Don't get yourself in trouble. It's not worth it, because if you're making money, then pay the money, right? Don't jump through hoops over here. Right now, this person, that doesn't seem like such a religious person, but he's got some morals, he's got some scruples, which makes sense. It's certainly better for business, right? And so, you're going to make money, okay, so you're going to pay it, but you want to have a good reputation. Your reputation's worth everything, because if you have a bad reputation, people aren't going to do business with you, unless you have the same crooked people that you're dealing with. So, when it comes to being honest in business, it's not an easy thing. And the reason is because the evil inclination runs wild. You cut corners here, cut corners there. You mess someone up in the process. Doesn't matter, because you want to make money. And there are people that will buy into that. They don't, and to them it doesn't really matter. But there has to be integrity. I'm not saying everybody out there doesn't have integrity. You have to be careful. There are certain people that quote unquote have less integrity. Right? Someone, it's in real estate also. They're doing whatever they can to sell the house because they're making money on commission. If they're making on commission, there's certain things they may not tell you, or they may put pressure on you. Yeah, come on, it's a really good deal. I got 3 other people bidding on it when it may not be true. When it totally may not be true. And, they're just pushing you and pushing you and pushing you because they want to make the commission. Right? So that's also wrong. I mean, I could go through the list of different professions, right? I'm not saying that there aren't people out
lawyers,
there, but there are people out there just want to make money for themselves. They have no faith in God at all, and they're going to take wherever they can get from, however much they can make, and if they mess you up in the process, they don't care, right? They don't care. There's no intellectual honesty over here, and they justify what they do in any number of ways, right? Which really gets to the next aspect. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, famous Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, that explains that, let's say you have 2 people learning. You're learning with a study partner. Your study partners, you're learning, let's say you're learning this Mishnah.
Okay.
And it says, don't make a statement that can not be easily understood on the ground. It's going to be understood eventually. So this person comes up with a novel explanation. You didn't really see it anywhere, etc. And you say, it can't be true. You dismiss it, right? In other words, you dismiss it outright. Now, the question is why? Question is why over here. In other words, if you know it's not true, or you feel it's not true, so then what are you going to do? You're going to argue against it. You're going to bring proof against it, right? But the obligation is that a person should not dismiss it outright. You have to hear what's being said to see if there's any merit. And not because, I want to say what I want to say, and I'm going to put down what you say because I want to hear myself think, right? I don't want to hear what you necessarily have to say. I want to give over my own explanation, right? So then you go back and forth, right? But you have to hear the other person, right? In other words, if a person can hear and a person can understand maybe it does have some merit, okay, discuss the issue. Don't just dismiss it outright because you want to dismiss it outright, right? Because, it may not fit with your world outlook or whatever. The question is it valid, right? Is it valid or not? There were people sometimes that I learned with in general that, their whole goal was just whatever someone said, to try and turn what they said into a pretzel. Not that what they said was any better, per se,
right,
but just to go to show that they have the intellectual capacity to knock what you said down. Right now, what does that do? What that'll do in general is it'll deflate a person. Because every time they say something, someone's going to come along and try and demolish it. It's not going to give them any self-esteem. If they were doing it, let's say, not out of intellectual stimulation, let's say they're doing it because they really think what you said is wrong, right? And they want to show you. They want to show you from their perspective, from other sources, why what you're saying is not right. If they're doing it to put you down, that's obviously wrong, right? That obviously is wrong. Will destroy a person's self-esteem. If they're doing it because they want to get to the truth and you're banging it out left and right, it's true, it's not true, you have to be open-minded enough to say and not hold on to your explanation for dear life, if there's a flaw, if there's a hole in it, right? Let's say there's a significant hole. Let's say there's a piece of Talmud that says something against what you're saying. Or you have one of the early commentators, later commentaries, demolish what you have to say. Doesn't mean you didn't have a valid question, but, if they demolish it, you have to say why you still think you're right or why they're going to be wrong or, whatever the case is. But, in the end, if a person is really searching for truth and they really wanted to get to the essence of what they're learning, then sometimes the person's going to have to hear that's wrong, right? What you're saying isn't true because of this and that, or this can't be the explanation, etc. A person has to have enough self-esteem that even if a person disagrees, that they're disagreeing for the reason that this is not what the text says. This is not what it means. This is not what the repercussions are going to be for this reason, that reason, the other reason. But they're not doing it to belittle. Anyone who does that, that's forbidden. Right? Sometimes a discussion, you see two people learning, hands are flying all over the place. They're yelling, they're screaming, right? But it's not a personal thing, right? It's not someone belittling someone else. Nobody wants to go through that. And if someone is learning with someone and they just knock down everything they say and they belittle them, you learn with someone else. You can't learn with such a person because they don't have any, they don't have what we call derech eretz. They don't have any, their character traits are a little bit flawed over here, right? If they're doing it because they want to help you see the truth, they want to tell you that this is not what the text says, and it doesn't mean that because of this, that, and the other thing, that's one thing, right? But again, if, a person, I don't know too many people like to be critiqued. I don't know too many people that like to hear that, someone else say, you're wrong. You're just totally wrong. If it's said in a respectful way, and a person can actually hear the words, because let's say they've worked on this idea, and they bring proof from this, proof for that, and then someone knocks it down like a stack of cards, and you're still holding on for dear life. The question is, if you're intellectually honest and you analyze and you see that the person's right, you should thank the person and say, thanks for steering me in the right direction. Right? It's not an easy thing to do.
Nope.
Right? Because we all have what we call an ego. Everybody has an ego. And if a person worked for something, for a while and
oh, Rabbi, I know the feeling. I spent 25 years working on that flood material, and I know how correct it is, and I am still waiting for a lot of thanks.
I hear that, but imagine you worked, okay, this is a good example. You worked for 25 years. Imagine someone came up with some explanation that knocked off your theory. Now, let's say it probably never happened, but let's say you worked 25 years. This is a little bit of a stretch, but let's say you worked 25 years, and you worked through all this material. you know it like the back of your hand, and someone gave you a little bit of an inference in something else that really knocked part of it down. Right now, what's the first thing you're gonna do? You're gonna roll up your sleeves. You're gonna come out swinging. What do you mean? I've been working on this for 25 years. I got this information, that information. Yeah, but this information is problematic because of this. Now, if you have a good explanation why that's not true and why it doesn't hold up, so okay. But if this person, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this person, what they're saying may be true.
But filibusters will do all they can to get their agenda across.
I understand, but I'm saying, what if there is some element of truth and you've been working on this for 25 years? The first thing you're going to say is, can't happen, right? It's not going to happen, right?
Well,
but
stay objective.
I'm just saying that if a person comes up with certain information, maybe it's going to knock down what they say. Maybe it won't, right? Maybe it won't, right? It's not a question of agendas and other things, right? I'm talking about facts on the ground. Yeah. If it's something that can be proven, right? Whatever it is, spiritual terms, physical terms, whatever it is, it's something that can be proven, something that's identifiable. It has nothing to do with agenda. Something else comes along. You didn't think about it. It was a different aspect that you wouldn't have thought of in a million years. Now, you might knock it off straight away and say, no, this doesn't apply, right? For any number of reasons, right? That could be. But I'm asking the question, what would happen? Someone's worked on something so dear to you, and then someone comes along and poses a piece of information that, in the back of your mind, you're starting to sweat a little bit to say, does that really knock off what I've done over here? Does it really have any weight? Right now, if you do knock it off, not a problem. Right? If you have a doubt and you're going back to information, other things, right? The question is, does a person have any integrity, any intellectual honesty, and they're willing to even deal with this, or not? We know sometimes in science, people have such a strong agenda, they won't look at any other information, right? I spoke about cosmology and proof of God's existence, right? We mentioned by Stephen Hawking. We mentioned by Einstein, right? There's certain information when it comes to creation of the world that they don't have, right? That they absolutely don't have, right? And through math, which they both agreed, seemingly shows that the universe is expanding. But they don't have any information, i.e. Hawking and Einstein, right, to disprove that. And that would show if the world is expanding, there's some being or something that is making it expand. Now, what was their conclusion? Both of their conclusions was exactly the same. Their conclusion was, there is no possible way that we are going to give in to the creationists, that we are going to give in to the Bible. We'll find the information one day, even if we don't have it now. Right? So what would I say? So I would say, okay, Al, right? We'll call him Al over here. Al and Steve, or Steve and Al, right? However you want to put them. And say, what does science have to show right now? Right now. Does science have any proof? Just don't give me buts. Don't give me doubts. Don't give me anything. Yes or no? Does science have any proof? No. Okay, good. Science has no proof. Isn't it possible? Isn't it possible that really what the Bible says in creation is true? Now, they'll jump up and down from their graves, yelling and screaming, nah, it can never be true. It'll never, ever be true. Oh, let's go back to the original question. Steve, Al, come on. What does science have to say? So Coffman's going to come later and says, you know what science says? Goose egg. Science doesn't say anything. And you have no proof. And if you have no proof, you have to entertain the possibility that it could be, it very well be, that God said at the beginning, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, that God created the heaven and the earth.
Rabbi, I get where you're going. Rabbi, I still think a lot of creationists haven't defined the term creation, right? I really, to say that
matter. It does not conflict.
Yeah.
It doesn't conflict, with science. The point is that you have to be big enough to say that, okay, this doesn't fit my world out.
Hashem definitively
and it may
created
never,
it.
right? The Bible, the Torah, God may not fit your world outlook, but you cannot say it's absolutely, no offense to them, stupid to say that there's no such possibility. You don't have any other answer in science, right? I have an answer according to Torah and Kabbalah, right? We have a concrete answer over here. It's a possibility. You can't just throw up your hands and say, no, it never happened. It never existed.
We don't have to
get
unfalsifiable.
Into it. That is called, that's called throwing it under the bus. If you don't have any other explanation, I don't care if you don't like my world agenda. You have to entertain the possibility. If you don't, then you're closed-minded. Then what happened to your mind expanding to, we believe in science. We think critically. Okay, but can't creation from the Bible perspective actually be true? No, that's fantasy. That's fairy tale. You got a better explanation? Steve? Al? You got a better explanation? No. You don't have a better explanation. So either come up with a better explanation, even a bad explanation, or you have to give some credibility, right? So if you're intellectually honest, which most people aren't, right? But if you're learning for truth and you're learning a text, a Torah text, this is what we're talking about. You're learning a Torah text. You're learning Musar. You're trying to understand what the message is, what the repercussions are. Now, the person you're learning with throws something out, tries to knock you down, and you're saying, you can't knock me down. I'm made of Teflon. Stephen L., they're made of Teflon, right? They're made of Teflon. You can't touch me, right? I'm untouchable over here. No, right? You have to see if what you're saying fits the criteria or it doesn't. And if you can answer up and you have your own proof, right? And so then you knock the other person, you knock the other person out. Again, it's for finding out the truth of what the text is saying. It's not putting somebody down in order to put them down, right? But you have to see if there's any merit what they're saying. If you can see there's any merit, then it's possible that a person can hear it, right? Otherwise, what do? What will some people do? Oh, you think what I'm saying is wrong? They reject it outright. Once they reject it outright, then they're not willing to listen, right? But, what you say is valid until someone knocks it off, right? They bring a text, they bring a Rashi, they bring someone else, right? They bring a Rashba, they bring other commentaries, whatever. They bring proof to show where it's wrong. If they can't bring proof to show where it's wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean what you're saying, what you're saying is wrong over here, right? You're allowed to go down that path and come up with whatever you come up with as long as it's aligned with Torah, right? But again, people have an agenda. And when you're learning, you can't have an agenda, right? That's the point. When you're learning with someone, you can ask questions, no question, right? You can try and develop an idea, a thesis, different things. Okay, right? You got to see, does it work? It doesn't work. Does it go with the flow? It doesn't go with the flow, what the Talmud here says, or what the commentaries say. So therefore, then you have to go in a different direction. But you have to be man enough or woman enough to be able to do that, right? You have to say, well, okay, if this is not going in the right direction, then I have to get into the right direction. But again, you're working together as a team. You're not, it doesn't mean the other person has to agree with everything you say, right? It's not about being a yes person, right? That's why Rabbi Yochanan loved to learn with Reish Lakish. Because when he learned with Reish Lakish asked him 20 questions, right? On just about everything he said. He didn't just take what he said, verbatim. He asked him, oh, you think this is what it means? I got a question like this, or I have a question like that. When Reish Lakish died, Rabbi Yochanan never found someone to replace him. He found more people that wanted to agree with what he had to say, even though he was very sharp, than to have someone to try and pick apart what he said. Reish Lakish did that, and and he died. He died shortly thereafter because he was in such love with Torah and learning that no one ever brought him to the level that Reish Lakish did. And Reish Lakish was not saying what he wanted to hear. Just the opposite. He was hammering him left and right. Right? Oh, you think this? And he asked him anything he said. Question after question after question. But that's how Torah gets elucidated. Right? It's how does a rabbi become greater? Right? He can be great in his own right by learning, but he becomes greater by the questions his students ask. Now, they may be stupid questions, some of them, right? But there'll be other questions that somebody will ask that the person, the rabbi will have to be on the ball, and be able to, come up with an answer, be a little more mind expanding. That makes them smarter, right? That makes them grow in learning because people are asking good questions. So the Talmud says that a person becomes great not because of his own learning. He becomes great because of their students and the questions that they ask. Right? It makes them smarter, makes them sharper. Right? Definitely makes them sharper. So, questions are good. There's no doubt about that. So, it helps the person get an answer, get clarity, but it helps the person giving it over think in a way that he wouldn't have thought before. Right? Maybe didn't think that way before. Or it could be someone revisits something that a person thought of, didn't really come up with a good answer. Now he looks into it more, right? Brings up certain things, got more knowledge. So, that could potentially help answer something. Answer something that, they had a question to and they come back to it. Whatever. But, you have to see where, obviously where the question's coming from. But that has the ability to sharpen a person. Another explanation is that sometimes, let's say, somebody's going to learn Musar. Someone's going to learn ethics. And they're learning, and maybe it doesn't speak to them. Maybe they don't want to feel like a piece of dirt. They don't want to listen, per se. Right? In other words, the person's heart is hard as a rock. And if a person's heart is that hard, what happens? They're learning a book, let's say they're learning Gate to Repentance, Rabbeinu Yonah. Right? Now, Rabbeinu Yonah, talks about in the third gate, he talks about the severity of sins. Right? He talks about there are 4 groups that'll never see God's presence in the next world. Right? One of them is someone who speaks Lashon Hara. Right? One of them, someone who flatters other people. Right? Let's say. So he's going through this whole list. But at the beginning, towards the beginning, he tells you that there's some people kind of lazy. Right? They're lazy, and let's say they don't want to eat matzah on Passover. They transgress a positive command. They don't wear tefillin, right, on the days that they're supposed to, not including Shabbos or a festival. I know they got up too late. Whatever the case is, we're not talking where they're under onus or they're sick. So Rabbeinu Yonah says that there's no positive command. There are positive commands of Shabbos as well. And he says a scary thing. He says many scary things in this book. And he says one of them is that there's no positive command in the Torah that is not dependent on resurrection of the dead. Now, a person will say, okay, I didn't eat the matzah on Passover. I didn't sit in the sukkah on Sukkot. I didn't shake my lulav, God forbid, or any of these things. Again, not because of onus. It's just whatever. He's lazy. He didn't do it. The person says, oh, what's the big deal? I didn't sit in the sukkah. Right? So now, when you look at it in the bigger scheme of things, we see, as Rabbeinu Yonah explains, there is no positive command that does not rely on resurrection of the dead. In other words, oh, what's the big deal? Well, the fact that you were lazy and you didn't do this can make the difference whether you get up at resurrection of the dead or not. Right now, let that sink in a little bit. Ooh. Right? In other words, Musar is not for the faint of heart. But we have to feel like a piece of dirt in order to realize. I'll explain it in another way. Imagine, in order to get a portion of the world to come, certainly for a Jew, right? The Ramchal and Derech Hashem says there's a minimal level you have to reach. right? There's a minimal level you have to reach the next world. Now, there are a lot of impediments, definitely a lot of impediments along the way. And, let's say a person's lazy. They don't do certain things. Now, if a person would realize, God comes to them in a dream, right? And most people, let's just say before we get to the dream, most people, as long as they're doing what God wants and they're trying and they're working hard, right? They should have a portion of the world to come. I'm not saying where they desecrate Shabbos on purpose and other things. All things being equal, depending on the source of the person's soul, depending why they do things wrong and what they transgress, without going into all that, they should have a portion of the world to come. God wants to see you strive. He wants to see you work hard. Doesn't mean we always reach that potential. A lot of times we're going to fail, etc. But that's what he wants. Now imagine if God would show us. God would come to us in a dream. And he would tell us, he says, listen, the scorecard's not so bad. There are a few things, okay, you're going to pay a serious price, but, it seems like you're okay. But I want to point out there were certain things that you did, that, you didn't really think that was that important, for whatever reason. In your mind, you didn't think it was that important. So now I want to show you in the bigger scheme of things of what it really means, right? You made a blessing on this apple, right? You made the right blessing. Now, when a person makes a blessing, so we believe that all fruit trees right now are being blessed, right? By, fruit-bearing trees that, they're going to continue to, give over fruit,
season,
and all that, even though, we don't see it, we don't fathom it. So God says, okay, I'll show you on this day. You made this blessing over an apple. Right? You were famished. You just spit out the blessing. No pun intended. You whiffed down the apple. You whiffed down a peach. You were hungry. I get it. But let me show you what the result was. Let me show you if you would have made a proper blessing. If you would have taken the time, you would have enunciated every word, right? You would have satisfied your hunger. Let me show you what it looks like, right? So then God shows you a picture. Now, let me show you what you did. Right? Now, you get credit. God's not saying you don't get credit over here. He says you get credit. But look at the difference in the picture. Right? If you would have done it this way, you have 1,000 orchards of apple trees, strong, giving, each tree giving 1,500 apples or more, or whatever it is. Your trees look a little bit wussy, look a little bit wimpy in my language. They're only giving over 150 fruits. 200, they're giving over fruits. I'm not saying not, but they're only giving over 10%. Because I'm not going to say you're not going to get credit for this, but you don't think it's that important, right? But I was hungry. Doesn't matter that you are hungry. You still have to have in mind, even when you're eating, even when you're making a blessing, right? Kids come home from God. When they come home from preschool, they're 3-4 years old. They say, oh, what's the blessing over spaghetti? Right? So you say mizonos because it's from one of the 5 grains, wheat, barley, spelt, rye, or oats. So they make the blessing. Baruch atah, right? They're making this unbelievable blessing. Right? You answer amen at the end of the blessing. Say, boy, that's pretty impressive. My 4-year-old makes an unbelievable blessing. Why do I make a crummy one? Why don't I say it out loud for people to hear? Why don't I just mumble? All right, we're lazy, we got bad habits. There are a million different things, right? The Rabbeinu Yonah says, oh, you didn't think it was such a big deal? You didn't think, resurrection of the dead is dependent on positive commands. Yeah, but I was tired. Yeah, but I was this. Yeah, this happened. Yeah, all these things are true. And everything we go through is a test. But at the end of the day, let's look at the 2 pictures, right? One picture looks kind of rosy, kind of nice. The other picture, overcast. It may rain. It may not rain, right? But you didn't do what you should have done in the optimal way, right? So someone's going to ask the question, I'm sure, if I don't do it in the optimal way, do I get credit? You get credit, right? We're not saying you get credit. You're going to say, well, if I don't do it in the optimal way, someone will ask, well, is it worth it to do it? Of course, it's still worth it to do it. It affects your soul, right? It has an effect on your soul. even if you did it 10%, right, your soul will feel that. Imagine if you did it 80%. Imagine if you did it 90%. So you say, come on, this is only for the righteous. Rabbeinu Yonah doesn't say that, right? In Chovos Levavos, duties of the heart, when he talks about different levels to reach, about tshuva, repentance, and other things, people will say, okay, this person did this, you can't take revenge, right? You're not allowed to take revenge, right? You're not allowed to bear a grudge in your heart, even if it's hard, right? So people will say, as the Chovos Levavos and duties of the heart says a number of times, you think he's talking about, the Torah, when it says, don't bear a grudge in your heart, don't take revenge, who's the Torah talking to? The righteous. He's talking to the 1% of the Jewish people, right? He's talking to the cream of the crop, right? Comes along, the Chovos Levavos and duties of the heart, and what does he say? And he says, survey says, he says, not that way. He says it's talking to everybody. You're going to say, Rabbi, these are high levels. He's saying this is the Aleph base. You want to get to repentance? This is what you have to do. You want to have proper faith in God? This is what you have to do. And there are things that he brings down over there. You're going to say, who in this world, even among the righteous of this world is holding there? And you know what the answer is? It doesn't matter, right? That is what we have to do, regardless of whether we get to that level or not. Because when anything happens, someone causes us damage, what's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to yell, we're going to scream, probably say every 4-letter word in the book, right? And they may deserve it, but remember, God's sending you a message. The person's liable, right? But says the Chovos Levavos in the gate of faith and belief in God, he says someone causes you damage, you should walk up to them, give them a hug and a big kiss. Why? Because they're giving you an opportunity to overcome your anger. They're giving you an opportunity to understand, to understand God's the one who's doing this, right? God may be using this person as a stick, or maybe not, right? But God's the one that's in charge. Now, if he's the one in charge, why is it that most people have knee-jerk reactions, even amongst Orthodox Jews? What's the reason? Right? Because the reality is we're not really believers, right? Now, that's going to sound absolutely heretical. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean we're not believers over here? Because he's telling you, you want to have proper faith in God? He says you have to realize where everything comes from, right? What my obligation is. And I have to realize that no matter what happened, I could have done something stupid. We're not talking about that. Someone else caused you damage, right? So I'll give my own example, right? Somebody who stole all my money, still alive. Right? I don't know how much longer he's going to be alive, but let's say, right, he's still alive. So really, I should call him up and thank him for what he did. Putting me through hell for a number of years and all these different things. I should walk up to him, give him a hug and a kiss. Now, most people would say you would have to be the most righteous person of the generation to do that. And I'm not. Not even close, right? But says the Chovos Levavos, he put you through whatever. God wanted you to go through this. And he didn't show me a video saying, he didn't come to me in a dream saying, well, really, you should have given up your life over here, but I had mercy, so therefore I took away all your money. That would have been better, right, if I would have known that. But okay, he didn't come to me and tell me that. So whatever reason it happened, and this person's a stick, says the Chovos Levavos, God wanted it to happen for any number of reasons, and you should thank him no matter you got over it, you didn't get over it, you worked on it, you became a better person, you learned from it, you grew in different levels. I should be kissing his bootstraps because he gave me that opportunity. Now, someone's going to say, I'm sure, what are we, masochists? This person did it. He paid a price. You're right, he did pay a price. I don't think high enough price, but okay, he paid a price, went to jail, right, for a certain amount of time. But at the end of the day, the message is for you, or really for me, right? But the Chovos Levavos is telling you that that's the proper reaction. Right? Now, what would most people say? Most people would say that they'd be jumping up and down screaming. This person deserves, to be punished and severely punished, deserves to suffer. I'm not worried about that. God will take care of him. Right? Whether in this world or the next world, right? I have no doubt about that. Problem is, you're left holding the bag, right? You're left holding the bag, all kinds of repercussions, right? Without going into all that. Now, if this person would come, seriously, which he won't, but if this person would come and get on his hands and knees and beg for forgiveness, because he knows, the end is coming, and he doesn't want to have bad judgment because of this, and he would come with tears in his eyes, right? With absolute tears in his eyes, true confession, which it'll never happen, but, thank God, true confession over here, really feels bad, really wish you could give the money back, didn't really want to do, like, all these things that would make a person melt, right? Now, if he would do that, according to the Rambam, right on the spot, you have to say, in your heart, get all the anger, hatred out of your heart and say, I forgive you. And give the person a clean slate. Now, how many people are going to be able to do that? How many people are going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Right? If this person would do it, which is never going to happen, right? But if he would do it, that would be my obligation. Now, if I could say, well, you really messed things up for a long time, I am not going to forgive you, right? I don't have a right to forgive you. It's just, no, really, whatever. And after a few times, he would get all my merits, and I would get the sin over here, right? That's how far it goes. Now, when it comes to something like that, repentance, a person has to be able to forgive them in their heart. If they say they forgive them in their heart and they really don't, that's not forgiveness.
No.
That 100% is not forgiveness, right? But the law is, the halacha is, if that would happen and the person would come to you and come in front of you, you have to deal with it somehow. I don't know how, right? However much intestinal fortitude a person's going to have, you have to find in your heart to forgive the person. But isn't it true? Isn't it true, no matter how bad it is, isn't it really true that a person has to look at it and say, okay, God is throwing this my way. He's throwing this my way for reasons that I don't necessarily understand. Maybe I'll never figure out. Maybe I will, right? But it's to my betterment, right? I could write a list of 10 things that made me a better person going through this. I could write another list of 20 things that made me a worse person in different ways, right? In different things, different effects and different things. But so in my own case, if I understand, right, and I live the Chovos Levavos, and I live what he says, right, and I believe what he says is true, and I believe 100%, and you can fit this in any scenario. If we believe that, then how can we have hatred in our heart? How can we really have hatred for someone who does something? Even if someone ran a red light and they were texting, they smashed your car, but you didn't get hurt, but they caused you damage, right? What's the first thing a person's going to do? Yell and curse, right? They're certainly going to curse and, give a knee-jerk reaction. Chovos Levavos says you run up to them and kiss them and hug them, right? You kiss them and hug them, giving you the opportunity. Now, it doesn't mean we're masochists. It does not mean we're masochists. We understand there's a bigger picture. So what's a simple explanation? The simple explanation is we have an evil inclination, right? We don't live the Torah the way we should, even if we go through the motions, even if we understand, even at a higher level, right? Put it into action is a lot more difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in my case, the Chovos Levavos would say, give him the opportunity. Give him the golden opportunity. Put yourself in that situation so you can forgive him with the whole heart. Now, again, how many people are going to be able to do that? We're human. And if someone caused us damage and did things and there are repercussions for however long, it doesn't really matter. But they got rehabilitated. They did something and they weren't paying attention. They weren't careful. Other things going on, whatever it is, but they caused the person real pain. The halacha would be you have to find in your heart to totally uproot any anger, any hatred. And even if you say you accept their apology, but somewhere in your heart you don't, it's not valid. There was a famous story with Rav Lopian. Rav Lopian, of blessed memory, was the mashgiach in a certain city here in Israel for many, many years, the end of his life. Very, very righteous person. And someone in the yeshiva told him that he was the spiritual mentor of the yeshiva. And someone told him that, came to apologize because he spoke Lashon Hara against him. Said something, whatever it was, against him. And, they wanted forgiveness. And Rav Lopian said, okay, give me 2 hours. This is something very serious. And I want to make sure I get any anger, whatever anger there's going to be. I want to make sure I totally uproot it in my heart so I can forgive you with a full heart. Now, that's being honest. There will people that will say, yeah, I forgive you, but they don't. So saying the words don't mean anything.
Nope.
Right? You have to uproot it from your heart, because then it still becomes a Torah prohibition of not holding a grudge. Now, every psychologist will tell you it's bad to hold a grudge. Why? Because why are you putting someone else in your head forever? It doesn't do anything. It's all negative.
Torture you.
Right? It's all negative. Right? So, but why would a person do it? Because they don't want the person to get off scot-free. They want to say, I'm going to remember what you did, and I'm never going to forget it. Now, it could be something important. It could be something very petty, right, as well. But if you let it in your heart, it digs, but you don't want to get hurt again. People put up a stone wall, because they don't want to get hurt. They put up a stone wall and another stone wall and another stone wall because they don't want to get hurt again. Right? Now, that makes sense, to a certain extent. But, any psychologist out there will tell you having that in your heart, all it does, it just drives a wedge further and further and further. That's what it does. Now, even with that, what does the Torah tell me? The Torah tells me that even if you want to put up boundaries and you want to say that, okay, I'm not going to let this person hurt me again, what are you saying in general? You're still saying the person's in my head. You're still bearing the grudge. Yeah. Bearing the grudge is a Torah prohibition. Now, for Noahides, I would also say maybe it's a moral imperative, right? Psychologists will tell you it's a bad thing, so maybe it is forbidden.
We shouldn't.
For Noahides, because it's a terrible thing. It just eats a person alive, right? That's it's not positive energy over here. Could be it's only a moral imperative, but everybody will agree having that in your heart at all times. Not getting rid of it, just putting up a wall so the person can't hurt you again. That's still a Torah prohibition of bearing a grudge. Because you are essentially...
It's a safety mechanism for some people.
Horrors.
Some people have gone through horrors.
I'm not saying not. What I'm saying is, though, that person's still bearing the grudge. That person's still in pain. Right? I had someone tell me, a year ago more, that certain things they did, they were wrong about, and they finally admit it. In the meantime, I won't say things have totally changed, right? But, that's a start in the right direction. That's definitely a start in the right direction. But the problem is the damage has been done, right? In other words, someone's damaged us in different ways. It's very, very hard to take a rag and just say, okay, I'm gonna clean up the spill,
wipe it off,
and I'm gonna clean out my rag, and everything's
scars stick around, yeah.
That's right. The scars stick around, right? But the thing is that we do get hurt by what people say, by what people act, right? Especially by loved ones, especially by family, and it's not easy just to push aside, right? Sometimes you have to deal with them, sometimes you don't have to deal with them. Right? It's not easy, in any way, to push things aside, especially even, let's say, someone apologizes, but let's say they meant it. I'm not even saying they didn't mean it. Let's say they meant it, right? But, you continue to be in contact with them. It doesn't seem like anything's changed, right? It doesn't seem like, no, the personality hasn't changed. Personality is still the same. It still grates on, it still could grate on you, other things. It is a development, certainly in the relationship. I'm not going to say it changes anything by any stretch, right? But that is certainly a step, hopefully in the right direction. The problem is that certainly if we remember things, the way they were said, like someone can remember something that was said 10 years ago, 15
Oh yeah,
years ago,
it's
because
haunting
it's
them.
still
Yeah,
it's still fresh. It still haunts them,
yeah,
right? So again, anyone will tell you you have to get rid of that,
yeah.
because if you focus on that, then you can't have a normal type relationship with the person that said it, because you still have a grudge against them, right? So, and again, everyone will say having a grudge is wrong, right? Nothing good ever comes out of it. People will use it, as you said, as a defense mechanism, right? That is true. But again, we're looking from a Torah perspective. So we have to somehow figure out another way, to uproot that. Ravigdor Miller, a blessed memory, and he lived the Chovos Levavos. He tells a story that, you come to synagogue, let's say every day, 3 times a day, and there's someone who comes and they're talking in the middle of prayers and they're doing this and doing that, right? They really bug the heck out of you. So you look at them in a negative way. So Ravigdor Miller says, okay, how can I look at this person and love them? This person is like, they're doing all these things bad. They ruin your concentration, other things. And, how can I love this person? So comes along Ravigdor Miller, and Ravigdor Miller says, you know what? Doesn't this person come on time? Doesn't he sit in the same place? Doesn't he at least come to pray 3 times a day? That's positive, right? That's a positive thing. Now you tell me, well, that's not positive enough to uproot the things that they do, that annoy me, right? But he says you're looking at it in the wrong, you're going in the wrong direction. Because all you have to do is find something positive. Once you find something positive about what someone does, even if they do other things wrong, the more positive things we find, then the more we can actually love them, right? Doesn't Torah say, "V'ahavta recha kamocha"? You have to love your friend like yourself. Problem is, nobody loves anybody more than themselves. Nobody. 1 second. We, even by a wife, by a spouse, we have to love them more than we love ourselves. To love someone like you love yourself is hard enough. To love someone more than yourself, that's a lot more. That's a lot more difficult. Yeah. Question.
Yeah, just about what you were talking about. For those here in the West that are B'nai Noach, say, that have come out of Christianity, should they be showing a degree of forgiveness towards the religion, the people that have had, like, I remember when I first met you, Rabbi, I told you, well, when I was in Christianity, I was publicly excommunicated 3 times. And you said, good for you. You were so encouraging. I think you started off today's message when I said, I think I've done everything I need to do. I'm ready to go home. And you said, no, because when you'd stop talking and be dead right on the spot, you just like you started off today. But I mean, should people, B'nai Noach, I get forgiving wrongs, those that would, stab you in the back and bury everything under the carpet and pretend it didn't happen and this, that, the other thing. And it's all you. A lot of what we talked about today, you've covered so much ground here. Where do we draw the line? Because I've heard rabbis get to the point where they say, no, don't say anything positive about such and such, being here in the West and
it depends. If it's somebody who's a heretic, I don't have to look for positive things. Just the opposite. I can deride them as much as I want. If it's someone who's leading someone astray, right, religiously, I don't have to find anything positive about them. We're talking about people, people of your own kind, right? Jews, right? Non-Jews, as long as they're not really evil, right? They don't have the status of being evil. Right, then I have to look at them in a certain way. If they are evil, if they are leading people astray, they're doing other things, they're blaspheming against God. We are going to come to the point, as I was mentioning, I don't know if you heard that we're going to have a part 10 over here because we still got.
I probably need it because you covered so much good stuff.
Last part of the mission to get to, which we didn't get to, but. the Mishnah says also there's an obligation to judge someone, give someone the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Right? There's a mitzvah to give someone the benefit of the doubt. When does that apply? That only applies where someone is keeping Torah mitzvahs. You see them in a compromising position. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt that either if they did something wrong, if it's a rabbinic scholar, let's say, that they repented straight away. Right? Even if they're in a compromising position, there's a mitzvah to judge someone favorably. Now, let's say the person's evil. Let's say the person doesn't care about God. They don't care about blasphemy. They don't care about Lashon Hara. They don't care about any of these things. They deride religious people, and they're caught in a compromising position. No mitzvah whatsoever to judge them favorably. Right? Just the opposite. There's a mitzvah to judge them as guilty. It doesn't matter. They have a track record. Once a person has a track record, then, and they don't keep Torah mitzvahs at any level, then I don't have to judge them favorably. Now, someone's going to say, oh, really? Going to discriminate against, non-religious Jews? Again, if they're doing what God says, right? If they're doing what God says, I have an obligation to judge them favorably. If they're not doing what God says, let's say that there's a great Shabbos in public. They have a status of a non-Jew, right? They have a status of a non-Jew over here. I don't have to judge them favorably at all. They're liable for a death penalty, 100%. So if they have a track record in the negative way, absolutely no mitzvah whatsoever to judge them favorably. Now, again, some people may say, well, that's not fair. Well, it's perfectly fair when you look at it in the terms of my relationship to God and a Jew's relationship to God. Right? If someone did something evil and they come back and apologize, I don't necessarily have to accept their apology. Right? If I see they're going to change or whatever, if they did it on purpose, whatever, and their status changes, who says I have to forgive them? I should. Right? We're saying we should, a person should.
When are you being the bigger person? Where's the target? Yeah, we don't want to paint it around our actions like
no, you're right.
We have in former days.
But I would say like this: if we look at it like the Chovos HaLevavos says, that this is something coming to me, not that I did something stupid, that God is punishing me, I should be thankful this person's giving me the opportunity. It doesn't mean I have to be a dish rag over here, right? But at the same time, I have to realize, a person has to realize where it comes from. Not only that, it goes further than that. That somebody who does something and they do it for any number of reasons. So the question is, okay, how do we view it? Do we view it, if somebody does something to us, even if it's a family member, right? Family member's worse, right? But someone who doesn't know anything about anything, right? My famous example, someone grew up as a potato farmer in Idaho or in the prairies, right? No offense, anyone's a potato farmer, grew up in any of these places. They don't know anything about anything, right? They don't know anything about Torah, nothing about mitzvahs, and they say, well, I think the Torah's like this. And I think anyone who's Orthodox is like this. And I think whatever. They say all kinds of things, blaspheme against God. They can't read the Aleph Beis, right? But they make some nasty comments. They make some below the belt comments. You want to take a sledgehammer, right? You want to take your Louisville slugger. You want to hit them upside the head, which they may deserve, right? 100% they may deserve. So if that is the case, why can I not look at the person and say they belong in Sing Sing, right? They belong in Alcatraz. They belong in jail. These people are mentally unstable, right? They deserve to be in a straitjacket. That's the truth, right? They're not looking at the world the way they need to. They're looking at it in a very skewed world. So why in the world am I going to take whatever they say seriously, right? In other words, we'll make it more graphic. Let's say somebody who's mentally challenged. Someone who's autistic. They do something. They say something against us. They pushed us, this, that, whatever it is. Now, somebody who did that, are they in the right mind? No. Right? They probably have the status of a 5-year-old, if that. They don't know what they're doing. They're not in control. They don't have the mental capacity.
Right.
If they don't have the mental capacity, why am I going to get upset? Now, you're going to say, because I have values. because God deserves to be defended. How can you listen to someone blaspheme and all that? But again, the advice I was given, it's not easy to put in practice, but the advice I was given many years ago is these people are lunatics. They're lunatics.
They transcended one of the
and
commandments.
what they say is absolute idiocy. That's what it is. 100%. There's nothing to talk about. That's what it is. Right? So now, why am I going to get offended? Why am I going to get offended? Right? And what's the answer? We know what the answer is. The answer is that we take what we do seriously. We take, if a person's a Jew in training, they take what they're learning seriously. If someone's a Noahide, they take what they're learning and what they're doing seriously. Right? They don't want to hear someone, someone say something against what they do. Say something against God because, you really believe, if you eat a cheeseburger, it's going to affect you and you do this and come on, you really believe that? And so either you could give them a snappy answer, shut them up in 3 seconds, right? Or you can just let them talk and you move on to the next topic. You could sit there and say, come on, you can read Hebrew, right? You really know what the Torah is about, right? I mean, you can sit there and, make it a war. I don't know if it's worth it, right? But in the end, we get offended. Some people get offended more. Some people get offended less. But essentially, we get offended. We get upset, right? God can defend himself. He doesn't necessarily need us to defend him. If someone asks, well, why do you do this or why do you do that? So sometimes we'll have an answer. Sometimes we'll say, well, God said it, we do it. Oh, you want to know proof of God? I got a lot of examples. No, not interested in this, that. Fine. But in the end, at the end of the day, we should be looking at them as they're a bunch of wackos. That's the way we should view them. And essentially, if they're not holding by Torah and mitzvahs, they are foolish. Right? That's exactly what King Solomon says. They're fools. They're absolutely fools. So I've just changed the word fool for wacko because, because we're going further and further away from Mount Sinai. Generations get weaker and weaker. The world is a messed up place. What we see, what's going on, so many different ways, which we don't have time for. But in general, that's how we have to view it. Now, someone says, that makes sense logically. Makes sense logically, right? Put it into practice when someone says something. And you just want to rip them to shreds. You just want to absolutely rip them to shreds because they deserve it. Because they, I'm not saying you can't answer like a snappy answer and make, and shut them up in 30 seconds so they won't ask the question again, right? On the other hand, you say, okay, next topic. You just move on. If they keep egging you on, you don't talk to them, right? There's no point, right? But you have to have enough self-esteem where you're going to say sticks and stones. Let them say what I want. Let them say what they want. It shouldn't affect the person. But the problem is, again, we get offended. We're going to defend God, and what we do, we take ourselves seriously. We take what we learn seriously. So someone without any education at all is trying to tell me, what the Torah says because they read one article in Wikipedia, but they can't learn a lick. Be like, they're claiming all kinds of things. They haven't, they don't know anything. So why am I going to take them seriously? Right? Because again, what they say is painful. We look at it as painful, not because we're on a low level, right? Not because, we're so sensitive. It has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is we take what we do seriously. And when we take what we do seriously and when our beliefs are serious, we don't want any idiot to come along and just trample on it and make fun of it and say, is this one of the rules? Yeah. Oh, is this one of this? Yeah, it is. You get a problem with it? Your problem. Go ask God. Go speak to Moshe Rabbeinu. You want an explanation? I'll give you all the sources. No, I'm not interested. Okay. Right? You nip it in the bud and that's it. But the problem is, we give more credibility to what family members says, loved ones say, than we really should, right? As we say, or people say, blood is thicker than water, right? Who cares? So what if blood is thicker than water? It's thicker than water. So what? So what if it's a family member? Doesn't mean they can't be heretics. Doesn't mean they can't say stupid things. Well, a person has to be the brunt of their stupidity. Why does the person have to be the brunt of their stupidity? Right? If we would look at them, no matter what they say and how bad it sounds, if we would look at them at that point that they are dressed up in a straitjacket and they're taken off to a psych ward, right? Then what they're telling me, just, we're made out of Teflon. What they're telling me just goes bink, and I knock that off, right? If I would think that and I would say it over and over and over, sticks and stones, sticks and stones. God runs the world. God's in charge. No matter what anybody says, they can't have an effect on me. If I say it once, twice, 3 times during the day, it has an effect on our psyche. Doesn't mean it's not necessarily painful. And it doesn't mean we're overly sensitive, right? These people could be totally undersensitive, or non-sensitive. Right? That's probably the word, right? They could be totally non-sensitive over here, but it doesn't mean I have to be a dish rag, right? But if I look at it in those terms, what do I care what they say? Again, I'm not saying it's not painful, right? I've had this, I've had this recently, and, I just decided that if I feel it's important just to shut them up, I will. If not, I just let them talk. They want to say something, and if they see they're not going to get a reaction out of you, it's not going to be that much fun, right? That's how someone who teases, that's how you get them off your back. They keep saying things. If they get under your skin, they'll keep coming.
That's right.
They'll keep saying the same
they get off
thing.
On reaction. Yeah.
Right. If there's no reaction, I could say, which I said something, I said, that's the best you got? Come on, my 8-year-old knows more than that.
Yeah.
Give him the
rope a dope.
My 8-year-old could run circles around you. You're aware you have a 2nd grade education at best. You're trying to knock me out with something. You have no idea what you're talking about. That's what you're advocating. You could go down that. You just insult people, which I'm good at, right? But at the end of the day, a person can decide. They just want to come shooting back. Yeah. But again, it's not really gonna do that much unless the person is gonna be willing to hear what you have to say. If they're not gonna be willing to hear what you have to say, what are you gonna answer for? You're just gonna egg them on. They're gonna say something else. They bring up another topic. They may agree, they may disagree. So, a person has to realize, speaking to people, if you're not going to get anywhere and they're just going to continue to make fun, what do I need it for? Even if it's family. I'm not saying a person should necessarily cut off ties with family, but sometimes it's necessary because, it's just, you're not getting anywhere. It's not going to help anything. And you can say, listen, we can agree to disagree, talk about something else. You don't need, just because blood is thicker than water, it doesn't mean anything. Right? It's a totally irrelevant statement. Wow, this is who your family is. Okay, so what? And so someone made an obnoxious comment. I shouldn't hit them. Oh, what are you being violent for? Because they're obnoxious. Someone's obnoxious, right? But again, how do we deal with it? If they're insane, which they are, then I shouldn't get upset at all. So we should try that at home. Think about that, verbalize it a few times, then whatever a person says, it doesn't really matter. Right? It's really not going to matter, even if it sounds painful. We have to be made out of Teflon over here because the person really, has about a 25 IQ when it comes to Judaism. So if they have a 25 IQ when it comes to Judaism, it's like, oh, you deserve to be on Noah's Ark, don't you? With the animals, because you're no different. Oh, what, you calling me an animal? You calling me? Come on, they have a 25 IQ. What are you arguing with? You're going to argue with a chimpanzee? Go ahead. You can argue with a chimpanzee. Maybe they have more than 25 IQ. I don't know. It's not worth the time. It's not worth the mentality in order to get upset what they say. I'm not saying it's not painful. The question is, how do we view it? And then we can view it in a certain way where it should have, no effect. It should have no effect at all, right?
Should.
My chihuahua just said something. Said something obnoxious. Okay. Woof. Okay, so that's the end of the conversation. It's not any. I'm not saying it's.
Are you talking about the length of our own personal fuse here? Is that what you're talking about? Our own personal fuse should be a long one.
What I'm talking about is someone that's going to come out and blaspheme against God, and they know you take these things seriously, and they make fun. It's not a question about just getting angry, right? The question is they're blaspheming against God, right? So you're going to say, I have to answer this, right? I have to answer in a way this person will never do it again, right? And the person gets on. It's not just about anger.
Definitively.
Right? It's not about that, right? What it's about is the fact that there are people out there that think I have to answer for God for everything. So I'm going to come out against this one. I'm going to come out against that one. I'm not saying even if they're blaspheming, it doesn't really matter. But I'm talking about someone who you have a contact with, someone who's family. It's not just a question they're pushing your buttons. They want to see you get angry. That could very well be, right? But at the end of the day, how do we view them? How are we supposed to view them according to the Torah, right? And we're supposed to view them like a tied up chihuahua. That's how we're supposed to view them, because that's about their mental capacity. So it's not just about getting upset, but if someone says something like that, they're a chihuahua. Why am I going to let them even get inside my head? Yeah, right? So sometimes you got to cut the line. You shouldn't speak to them at all, maybe, right? But it doesn't mean I have to answer them. Doesn't mean I have to get upset. What they say, okay, I can feel the pain, and I can't believe they're saying this and this and that. How far do you take it? And what I'm saying is, you don't have to take it that far at all. Sticks and stones, right? Even if it's blasphemy, sometimes you may have to answer, right? But if they deserve to be, tied up in a straitjacket, and they have a mental capacity of about 25, I'm not going to take what they say all that seriously. I'll give one example, right? It's just kind of funny, as we're winding down here, right? I'll just give one example. I heard over Shabbos, I have a friend of ours that, tragically a friend of mine passed away a number of years ago from cancer. And this person's mother, not religious, wanted to, give a certain amount of money to donate a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, right? So they said, which is kind of, it's kind of funny, that, when the Torah scroll is done, do you think you could send it to me so my Reform rabbi, give a blessing on it?
Asked you
No,
you
they
for
didn't
this.
ask me. They asked this their daughter-in-law, right? Even though the husband's not around anymore, it was this woman's mother-in-law. I mean, really not her mother-in-law now because her husband passed away, but okay, they weren't asking it to make fun. They weren't doing it in that sense. That's just idiocy. That's just, okay, they don't know anything. I understand. It's not really part of the topic. Part of what we've been speaking about. But if someone even makes a statement like that and they're just trying to egg you on, you're like, are you serious? There are videos out there about dogs having bar mitzvahs. You really think that's legit? Come on. There's a limit. There are women being dressed up as men, breaking all the records in women's sports. That's idiocy. That's ludicrous. They're men. I don't care what they do. They're men. They're still men, right? So, you look at these things. No, they're really women. You have to understand. No, I don't have to understand. They're men, right? So the question is how far you want to take all this and how much you want to get it inside your head, right? And I would say that it's not worth it to get inside your head. And, you let it go unless you feel you really have to answer, right? And then you move on, because if not, then it bothers you. Then you bear a grudge, and you don't want to do that, right? Because it's not worth the energy. Like we said, every psychologist will tell you that.
Rabbi, when clearly, I mean, I heard a word a number of years ago that came out in the 60s called intertextuality. And the concept behind it, intertextuality, that this professor was trying to put out is that every word you ever read becomes part of you, and it gets into your psyche, into your makeup. And when you speak, you are intertextualizing something you've formerly ingested. It's kind of like what gets into us goes out. And I say to myself, I realize that what you're teaching is clear and plain, and I need more integrate to have that calmness and that peace and that true Torah response in scenarios. But I cannot seem to just beat into submission everything that comes at me. And the more I seem to try to put it into check myself, okay, let's just turn up the ray beam or something. And it's like,
but again, it's easy. The first thing is you have to know what to do. You have to know what's right. Right. Second thing is I have to now put it into action. Put it into action is a lot harder to do. It's a lot more difficult, than we think. Looking at someone in a straitjacket without getting offended is a hard thing. I'm not saying not, right? But I'm saying, well, what it means over here is you have to change your mentality, right? You absolutely have to change your mentality. That's what Torah does, right? The more we learn, the more we understand, right? You say, wow, now my perspective is totally different. I'll give one example. That in the gate of repentance, in duties of the heart, he says that a person can only get to repentance if they realize they've done something wrong.
Right.
Right? They have to have regret, they have to remorse, but the only way they're going to get forgiveness for someone else and to ask for forgiveness is they have to realize they've done something wrong. If they don't realize they've done anything wrong, they're never gonna get forgiveness. They're never gonna ask for it.
That's right.
Right? So
Crystal clear.
You have to know. Yeah, first of all, you have to know what our obligations are. You have to know, okay, who's got the status, maybe of a heretic, not a heretic, and all that. I have to have a certain level of knowledge, then I have to know what to do with it. Now, even with all the things we do know, doesn't mean we do everything right. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but we have to start somewhere. We absolutely have to know what to do, and then which is much harder, is that we have to go out and do it. Now, even if we know what to do, it doesn't mean God's going to make it easy. It doesn't mean the evil inclination is going to make it easy, right? There could be any number of obstacles being thrown in our way, and even if that is true, we have to dig through the obstacles. We have to go through them in order to help us reach that potential. Now, it doesn't mean the obstacles come at the same time. Could be there are stronger obstacles. Could be there are weaker obstacles. Could be obstacles I never had a few years ago come up now, right? For any number, of reasons, right? But again, we're thrown. There are a lot of things on a daily basis we're thrown at. A rabbi of mine who happens to be a tremendous psychologist as well, once told me a person goes through 75 move swings, I think, in an hour, possibly in an hour, right? We go up and down, up and down. We hear news, someone's sick, someone died. We're happy, our team won, they didn't win, this, that, all kinds of other things, right? And things that we're thinking of. We go up and down. We go up and down all the time. So you say, if we go up and down all the time, where's the equilibrium, right? Where's the equilibrium? How do I stay at an even keel? There's only one way to do it. That's through learning Torah, right? That's through Musar. That's through ethics. That's through doing things on a constant basis so I'm grounded. That's why I have to learn Torah at some point a little bit however much every single day, regardless if, you work or not. You got to find the time, right? And finding the time means that whatever I'm learning, something the more practical, less practical, doesn't matter. The point is I have to be grounded in what the Torah says. I have to make it a part of myself. When we return the Torah scroll to the Ark, Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, right? What do we say? It's the Torah is the tree of life to those that grasp it, right? It's causative in grammar, in Hebrew grammar. It's called hefil. It's causative. It's saying that not how much I put into Torah. I can't put anything in the Torah. I can't add to the Torah, right? It's how much I put Torah into myself, right? So the more I learn, the bigger my evil inclination. Wow. So the more I know, the more I'm aware of. Isn't it a catch-22? Because God's going to say you're liable for more over here because you know better, right? It doesn't mean what goes on in your life gets easier, right? It doesn't mean that, right? We may think, I came to Torah mitzvahs, things are a lot easier. It's not true. It's certainly not true. People have trials and tribulations, well beyond a convert, someone who wants to convert. All kinds of things go wrong in the process of conversion. Forget about moving. All kinds of things go wrong because it's a test. Because God wants to weed out the ones that aren't going to be able to cut it. Just like in medical school, 30% get weeded out in the first year, right? Another 10, 15% second year because they want the cream of the crop. They want to squeeze as much as they can squeeze out of someone to be the best doctor or whatever, no pun intended, that they want. Torah is not meant to be easy, right? It's a constant struggle. Anyone who tells you, and I've had someone tell me this a number of times, I'm happy the way I am, that is akin to spiritual death because either you're going up or you're going down. Yeah. That means you're spiritually dead over here. Right? Imagine you go into an interview. Yeah, I'm basically mediocre. Well, what do you do that's good? Nah, I'm only mediocre. Next. Right? What do you think? God needs mediocrity? He doesn't want mediocrity. He wants people to be the best they can. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. Doesn't mean we don't have an evil inclination. Doesn't matter you're tired, this, that. You got to learn. You got to put it into action, right? So you're going to say, well, this is really hard. I didn't say it was easy. I never, ever said it was easy. But we have to do it in a way where we don't want the same trials and tribulations. We don't want to keep going through the same thing over and over again, showing we can't accomplish this. We want to accomplish, we want to move on, right? Because when it comes to Yom Kippur, every year, if we're beating our chest for things we did last year because we didn't get over them, then we're in trouble because we're doing the same things again and again and again. If every year we have different trials and tribulations, okay, that means we got somewhere, right? That means we're growing. If I have the same things over and over and over again, right, that means I haven't worked properly. I haven't done the hard work we need to do. It's not about the fact that everything's going to be easy over here, right? Certainly not. And anyone who's come back to Torah, as a Jew or a non-Jew, Jew in training, they have not had it easy, right? All we have to do is look at Abraham, look at all the trials he went through, right? He went through all these trials, right? And God's like, well, what do you think of my covenant? It's like, what a covenant. Say the best for last, circumcision. Imagine he goes through all this, right? But they're all tests. They all brought out his greatness. The Ramban says, why let him go through the last test? The last test, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, right? Why didn't you give him credit? He was 9 for 9. Because he wouldn't have been as great as he was if he didn't go through it. I was like, what do you mean? He would have been, if God knows what he's going to do in the future, give him credit. Give him credit as if he did it. He already had a legacy. Nah, if he didn't do this, he doesn't fulfill the legacy, right? He does. He would have been great without the binding of Isaac. 100% he would have been great.
Sure.
Nothing to talk about. But the fact that he went through it, that sealed the legacy. But I would have said, don't let him go through it. Why? Give him credit. You can't give him credit. Why not? Because he didn't do it. Unreached potential is unreached potential. You cannot get credit for something you didn't do. There is what to say that if a person had the intention to do a mitzvah, could be you get credit, right? That you did it even if you didn't do it. But if you started a mitzvah and you and you didn't finish it, then we're told that you bury your wife and your children in your lifetime, right? So now, why is that punishment more severe? Right? See, here's getting grayer now. Why is that punishment more severe? The punishment's more severe because you started the mitzvah and you said to God, my language, screw you. I didn't have a chance to finish it. Something else happened. I'll get to it later. And God says, you tell me that, you're starting this mitzvah and it's not important enough for you to finish. I don't care if you got distracted. I don't care if your evil inclination got to the best of you. You started this mitzvah. It's one thing if you didn't start it. If I didn't start, if a person didn't start the mitzvah, it's one thing. If you started the mitzvah, you didn't finish it, it's 10 times worse. Because then you're telling God, well, it's not really that important for me to finish. That's a scary proposition. That 100% is a scary proposition.
Wow.
So we may never reach our true potential. We don't know what our true potential is. But no one should ever rest on their laurels. That,
Right.
when they go to sleep, before their head hits the pillow, and you take an accounting of what you do. Take an honest accounting. What did I do? Who did I speak to? How did I interact with others? How did I pray? How did I learn? Go through the list. Go through the list on a daily basis. You'll see what you have to work on. It's pretty clear, right? It's pretty easy. Now, a person may just blow it off and say, yeah, you're right. Got to work on this. Yep, I have to work on this also. But you got to make a plan how to do it. You can't just say it in your mind and say, well, yeah, I really failed at this. Oh, I really failed at that also. There are things I did that were good, no question, right? But we have to work on things that we don't do as well. We have to try and perfect them to the best of our ability. We have to try and overcome things that we need to overcome, even if it's hard, right? And we mentioned, a number of times, things that even, God's throwing at us and he's using other people. And we have to be able to look at them and forgive them, certainly if they come to apologize. That is not an easy thing to do. Bearing a grudge is not an easy thing to do. So what are you going to do? Throw up your hands and say, well, it's too bad I can't do it, so I'm out? No, you gotta roll up your sleeves. It's just like we're going to be rolling up our sleeves and using Fantastic in our houses, smelling like who knows what, cleaning for Passover, right? Scrubbing that evil inclination out of us, right? That's what we're going to be busy doing. Yeah, and in the end, but we have to get the message. We have to get the message and we have to live it. You can't live on your laurels. You can't say, well, I'm doing better than most Jews. And even if it's true, it doesn't matter because God's not going to judge you according to what someone else did. God is going to judge you for what you did in this world. He's not going to say, oh, why weren't you like this one? Why weren't you like that one? He's going to say, why didn't you do who you could have been? Right? Then he's going to show you a picture later. After 120 years, this is what you could have done. This is why you had to go through certain things. This is what you could have done if you would have accomplished X, Y, or Z. Right? Imagine, I'll just throw this out there. Imagine, if this thief would come to me, on his knees, beg for forgiveness, and somehow I found in my heart to forgive him, and we both hugged. Imagine we both hugged, and I really just threw this off my heart. Imagine what an impression that would make on heaven. I don't think it's going to happen, but imagine God says to the angels, look what I did over here. Look what this person went through. Look at the suffering. Right? You're going to say, well, is he the righteous of the generation? No, certainly not, but this is what he went through. Right? But look what he was able to accomplish. Look what he was able to learn, to put in his head, to put in his heart, and overcome whatever we're going to call him, whatever this person did. And he's able in the end to look at him in the eye and say, I forgive you, and you're just a stick and everything else. And that's the end of the movie. Right? Imagine the power that would have. Well, it's probably never going to happen. But imagine, in theory, right? That's what movies are about. It's all fantasy. Imagine if it would happen. Right? Imagine the power, what it could do to the person's soul. You know how much that could erase in a person's soul? So why aren't I running out to do it? Because there's pain. Because it's hard. It would be extremely hard on anybody, not just myself. Be extremely hard on anyone to forgive at that level. Extremely hard. Could be that's what I'm doing here. Could be that's what my soul needs. Final rectification. But you're going to say you're human. We're all human. Does God really expect that? Avos says that's our faith. That is the ABCs over here. Right? If a person goes through such a thing, that means we're not looking at it in the right perspective. Right? That means it doesn't matter. We keep Torah, we keep mitzvahs, we keep everything. It's all irrelevant. It's irrelevant because we're not internalizing the message the way it says, the way it should be. Sure. Right? So someone will ask, as we always say, who's holding at that level? Who's really holding that at that level? That's not what the Avos says. He says that's your obligation, certainly as a Jew. That doesn't mean you're a masochist. That's your obligation. You have to see the bigger picture. And if you don't see the bigger picture, you didn't get it. Right? You did not get the Torah the way
heaven forbid. Heaven forbid.
But that's the reality. Right? That, you say, what? I'm learning Torah. I'm doing the best I can. This is something God can't expect. I don't know that to be true. The Torah says you can't bear a grudge. Right? The Torah says there's repentance. We see by Nineveh, right? Even by non-Jews, right? And they were doing terrible things, and God still had the ability to forgive them, right?
So Job wanted it to happen, though. There, it's done. I preached, I shared it, done. Make it happen. Boom. Didn't. We're not saying living life is easy, right? As the Mishnah later on says, you live against you're born against your will, you die against your will. Against your will, but you also have to live, right? There are many things in this world we don't have choices on. We're not given free choice. There are plenty of things we do have free choice. The question is what we do with what is thrown our way. Some people, because of certain circumstances, just say, okay, I'm never going to believe in God. I'm never going to do anything. I'm going to shut down. And it's not what God wants. Some people will say they've been put in a certain situation where it's not possible for them to overcome. So we believe God puts a person in a position that they can handle, not that they can never overcome it. Now, we may think we can overcome it, right? But we see that a person has a certain spiritual, internal mechanism where if we work hard, we can overcome it. Now, there's certain things that are psychological. We may need professional help to get over certain things. Because person may be wired a certain way that, in the normal way of trying to deal with things, you never overcome it, right? First, you have to see what the problem is. And then you have to try and,
do what you can to overcome the problem. But if a person, as we mentioned, doesn't see they have a problem, they're never going to try and overcome it. Right? So, a person can be dealt a certain hand and say, wow, this is pretty bad. This is pretty awful. What they have to go through and, all kinds of different things. But, at the end of the day, is the proper perspective? Well, God put me in this situation. Right? He put me, gave me these siblings, gave me these parents, gave me certain things over here. Right? So if you got a complaint, it's with him. Right? He's the one that wired you. Right? At the same time, we do things to ourselves. We make mistakes that we cause, not just because he put us in certain situations. Right? But at the end of the day, what's the obvious question? The obvious question you would ask is, you or anyone else would ask, I have this talent. I have certain things I can do, and I'm not able to use them. In the capacity I want to use them. So a person could ask, so why did God give me this talent? The question is, well, we don't know. It may be something on the horizon, something somewhere down the line. We don't know.
I'm tired with a lot of hope when it comes to certain things.
Okay, I had a certain point, in my own life that I said I have all this talent. How in the world can it not be used? And make ends meet at the same time. It's talent God gave me. It's not on my own, right? And part of the answer is okay. Maybe at this point, it's not what God wants. Maybe.
Yeah, accepting it's hard. Well, Rabbi, can we wind this down because we've been going for almost a half hour longer than normal.
Okay, but you don't have anyone else next, right?
Oh no. Except my wife waiting downstairs.
So we can still go. So as long as until I slow down, I'll let you know. But in this case, so I had a kid. So he said you have all this talent, right? And all this talent, and then got taken away, right? I was building and this and other things. So the question is, okay, what does God want over here, right? If a person never saw success at what they're doing, they weren't good at it, it's one thing. But if you have the taste of success and it gets taken in a nasty way, right? And then you feel totally useless because you have all this talent, you can't use it, that can make anybody depressed, right? It certainly can make anyone depressed. But part of the answer could be, maybe this is not what you're supposed to be doing now. Maybe God's telling you, I want you to go in a different direction. Okay. But even if that is true, then why did he give you the talent in the first place? Right? It's a catch-22.
No, things tend to work together.
If a person doesn't have the talent, they're not going to be held accountable for why they didn't use it. But if they have the talent, okay, maybe it's supposed to be used in different ways. Maybe it's not supposed to be used, in doing something full-time. Maybe it's only supposed to be done on the side. Maybe it's supposed to do something else, right, in order to bring in money or whatever the case is. Maybe that's the case. But what's the person going to feel, right? And I can tell you because I know you feel it. What's the person going to feel? They're going to feel, what in the world's my purpose here? Got all this talent, I can't use it, right? Or I can't use it in the capacity I think it should be used, right? And that can certainly lead to depression. I don't think there's any question. Because then you say, well, then why did God give it to me? Why did I come out of Christianity? Why am I doing these other things? If not for the fact that I should be able to use what I have. And then what does God want from me if he just beats it down and he says you can't use it? So in my language, what happened? So I'll tell you a story. So what happened in Chile, and then I got involved in doing outreach. People couldn't handle what I had to say, right? Because people don't want to hear what the truth is.
Too hot.
They want to hear fiction. They want you to tell good give good speeches in quotes. Hagona Tzadik Moreno V'Rabbeinu Dennis the Menace, or the Wizard of Id, or other things. They want to hear fantasy. They want to hear fluff, right? So part of it was when I was looking for other things, there were either I was overqualified, or they say, "Wow, you speak so strong, like you wouldn't be good here." You have to speak to what
back. Reel it in a little.
That what they can handle, whatever. So okay, a number of years later, I get involved by accident, dealing with converts, whatever, and events took place the way they did, and all of a sudden, I get a Facebook page. Then I start making videos. Then I start doing other things, whatever. And other things seem to happen. Okay, some in a negative way, certainly some in a positive way, right? But it could be that God says, yeah, you got the confidence, you got the knowledge, you got all these things. There's only one problem, right? What's the problem? World's not ready for this yet. The world can't handle in certain ways, this sort of thing. Now, did that water down anything by me? No. My Rebbe maybe way too strong, could very well be. He would say, halavai, that would be true, right? But in the end, there's going to be at some point in the future where there are going to be people out there, Jews or non-Jews, who can handle it, right? And who can see it for what it is. Now, if I would have been given a vision years ago, God would have said, you know what, you're going to be totally unsuccessful here. But, a number of years later, you're going to put a package together where you're going to show people and, things are going to move, and things are going to happen. But yeah, you have to have patience, right? Now, the problem was that since I already had something going, which was good and got taken away, where's the patience, right? This had to happen a number of years later, right? It had to happen over time, right? But like Scotty,
his ways are above our ways in a lot of respects.
Captain, I need more time. Like, Scotty, come on, we need to go warp 3 in 35 seconds. I don't care if you don't have 3 engines. Make it work, right? But what can that do to a person? What that can do to a person is it can knock them down. It could beat them into submission, right? It could say, but, and the argument kept coming back to the same thing. Why, first of all, why can't I find a job and doing outreach and other things when I have all this knowledge and certain level of talent that God gave me? Why can't it be used? Because God didn't want it to be used in this case. He didn't want it to be used, there. For some reason, he wanted me to get rejected here, rejected there, so it's going to bring me back to Israel, maybe, right? And it could have been you had to go back to Israel because, your kids had to marry certain people. They wasn't going to happen in the States. Certainly wasn't going to happen in Chile, right? So, okay, but I wasn't given this information. I'm not told this. I'm only seeing this in hindsight, right? So today, by my second meal on Shabbos, so I had all my kids together, right? I had one staying by me, one who lives near me, and one who came for Shabbos, staying by, my daughter staying by by her husband's, grandmother, but they were all there. So imagine, all these people, I got, 3 grandchildren by one, 2 by another, and 1 by a third. So you got 2 babies that are 2 days apart, right? They're about a month, a month and change. So you got babies screaming, kids running around, whatever. So it was, thank God they're earplugs, right? Whatever. But at the same time with all that, you see what you've built, and the hard work and everything else, and you say, of course, it's only going to get noisier. My kids are going to have other kids down the line. It's only going to get, more chaotic, etc. So, okay, but this is the way it should be. This, and I should be whistling Dixie, which I am, no question. That's the absolute nachas that you have, when things are done, in the right way. Now, can I explain why other things happen? Not a chance. I don't have any idea. Right? It could be you had to be rejected here, rejected there, rejected the other place. In order that you have to say, okay, there's nothing left for me here, so, I'm going to come back to Israel. Coming back to Israel, what did that do? Right? Caused other issues. But what did that do in the long run? So, got 3 of my girls married. Great son-in-law. One on the horizon. We'll see.
It's good that you can see the positive.
But again, it's seeing it in hindsight.
Yeah.
It's seeing it in hindsight. I'm talking out loud here. Seeing it in hindsight by putting the package together. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't suffer before. And a person goes through rejection. All that means is that there's another door that's going to open somewhere, right? Somewhere down the line. God has a plan. We're just not privy to how it works out. But, at the end of the day, when we see things that do work out, right? And then we see how the picture fits. Then you say, wow, what was I worried about? Right? I remember that, I'll give an example. So my wife works in the
last example, Rabbi.
Last example. So my wife works in social media, right? Does Facebook ads and LinkedIn posts and other things. And she had a client this month that wanted to cancel for this month, wanted, next month, whatever. And okay, I had all the money coming in. It wasn't such a huge thing. Certainly would have helped. And out of nowhere, someone sent almost the exact same amount of money.
Oh.
right? Almost to the penny. Almost to the penny, right? So it's funny when it happened, and I was like, so what are you worried about? In the end, isn't God going to take care of things? Don't we believe God's going to take care of things? We do.
That's all we got to hang on to.
We
right?
do. But when you see it work, and you see like all this wasted energy, I'm not saying we don't have to put our best foot forward. You got bills to pay. You got to figure out how it's going to get paid. Something's not going to get cut off. Other things. But when you see sometimes the pieces to the puzzle fit, and it comes out of nowhere, right? And you had all this wasted energy. I'm not saying I had that wasted energy. I wasn't really so worried, right? But in the end, even if I was, God says, I just want you to know I'm looking out for you, right? Don't think I'm not here pulling strings.
That's right.
Because when that happens, I mean, which I'm not saying it happens all that often, but I'm saying when something that like that happens almost to the penny, God's telling you, I'm still hanging here. I didn't forget you. Don't worry about it. I know it was something you were counting on. So I have it come through the back door. I have it come in a way you never in a million years, which I didn't. Not in a million years would have I expected it to come in the form that it did. It came out of nowhere.
And you thank Hashem, right?
100%. 100%. There's no question about it. I said, okay, you're the one who's in control. You're the one who can make anything happen at any time. Again, this
Rabbi,
in the back of my mind, if I would have thought of 250 people, right, who would have done this person would have been number 375. Would have been on the list at all. I'm saying that's how far out it was.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't.
Hashem's amazing. Yeah.
It wasn't something expected. It wasn't something I was even wishing for. It wasn't even the back of my mind at all.
Nope. No. Beyond,
and what's God telling you? He's telling you, I'm still in the picture.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm
not saying it always happens, but sometimes the unexpected will happen. And a person thinks, oh, they're down in the dumps, and how's this going to work, and how's that going to work? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's happened a number of times. I mean, certainly to me, and I'm sure it's happened to others as well. Where you least expected something. Right. Or you thought, let's say you were going to get less and you got more. Sometimes you thought you were going to get more. You got less. Right. But in the end, that can happen also. Right. But, in the end, this wasn't even an afterthought. Not even an afterthought. All of a sudden I saw, something came in. I was like, are you kidding? Like you're joking. Right. And to me, that's God's irony. Right. Because, he hasn't spoken to me recently or, pretty much ever. But, in general, what is he telling you over here? He says there are plenty of things maybe you need to worry about. You have to put your best foot forward, but you have to remember God exists. God can change a person's luck, quote unquote, at the blink of an eyelash. He can make anything happen, even when you least expect it. Right. So now maybe things won't happen, or they'll happen later, or whatever the case is. But I will tell you, if something comes where you least expect it, and you should absolutely be thankful, because if you're not thankful, what's God going to say? I just did this for you. Came out of nowhere. You weren't expecting it, so where's my thanks? Like, you don't even thank me? Like, you don't even say anything? Like, that was the evil inclinations argument, to God. He said, what did Isaac do over here? He didn't even thank you. All these different things. Like, where's the thanks over here? Right? And God shuts up the evil inclination. Right? But, if a person, let's take it one step further. If a person has had a miracle done for them, right? And they understand it's a miracle, but it doesn't change them, then what does God say? Why'd I bother? That was a total waste of time. Right? And he's not going to make it the next time. Right?
Nope.
He's going to squeeze you. He's going to squeeze you and say, where's my appreciation? Why didn't you appreciate what I did for you? But you recognize it as a miracle. You recognize where it comes from, but you don't give the proper thanks. So if God takes you out of your dire straits, and he helps you and you don't thank him, right? Now, if I was playing God with my George Burns, glasses and mustache, I'd take my wand and I go, zoop, and I turned you into a tadpole. That's what I probably turned into something worse than a tadpole, right? I turned you into something. Why? Because I'm the one who runs the world. If I'm the one who runs the world, and I just gave you something, or I just saved you from imminent danger, or whatever the case is, and it's something you weren't expecting at all, you don't thank me, then God's going to say, okay, now I'm going to make it worse. Now the reason is because you now recognize it as a miracle. Once you recognize it as a miracle and that God's in charge over here, then the thankfulness has to be tenfold, right? I didn't really deserve it. I want to thank you again. You didn't really have to do that. Whatever, you have to show thanks. Because if you don't show thanks, you were saved by a miracle. God says, I just wasted it over here. Absolutely wasted over. I'll give you one other example. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I should wind it down. I think you've really tugged at a lot of emotional strings today. At least you have for me. I hope the audience feels the same way. You've covered so much that we all have so much room to grow, and heaven forbid, suburbia here in the West, Rabbi, where so many men have a garage full of unfinished projects. I mean, I love how you touched on today. Don't start the mitzvah unless you're going to finish it. Better not to start it. You really touched on some things, like I said, that pulled in. I'm not a real emotional cat. I think you pulled on some strings that for me.
That's because you're a 6'7" white guy.
Room to grow. Well, I know there's so much room. Well, Rabbi, so we're off for next week, right? Because you've got Passover, and I wish
Passover will be Saturday night. So yeah, I'm going to be deep into matzah. I can tell you that.
All right, so
very deep into matzah. The week after, which is going to be the end of Passover, should not be a problem. Just keep in mind, we are changing
clocks.
We are changing the clocks, so I think for a number of weeks we should be okay. We might have to make it a drop later, but we should be, for a number of weeks, we should be fine.
You mean once the clocks go ahead?
Yeah, the clocks are going ahead next week, so that means Shabbos goes out later.
Okay, right? I'm just trying to coordinate, because I can't go any later with my second class that I'm not doing today.
So I'm saying it's going to be a number of weeks. It's going to be a number of weeks before it becomes, any issue at all. We got plenty of time, I think, before that. So it's not anything to get excited about now.
We'll work it out. If we got to massage it, we will massage it. We may have to keep it down to a 90-minute show instead of 3 hours.
Whatever. Listen, maybe it'll be easy.
Well, I'm trying to make up for all the time you think you don't get on Tanakh Talk. Beautiful series, the last one you've been doing, the last two-parter. I mean, it's just a wonderful series. I'm enjoying it myself. You guys, you can check that out. What is it? That's controversial issues. Yes, Rabbi?
Yeah, we were talking about demons and whatever. We're going to speak about reincarnation. Whatever. Well, we're not going to I think we're off for like 2-3 weeks because of the holiday. So I think he's just taking the time off. But yeah, the last two are about pretty much about demons. Angels, we spoke about. So whatever. There's a lot. There's a lot there as well.
Well put forward, Rabbi.
And you're 100% right. Anyone, you should complain to William Hall that you should tell him I deserve a little bit more time, but he's not going to give me. But you can.
I spoke to him the other day again. I had to text him right away. I sat down and I was going to watch the latest episode of Tovia Singer, and I had a few minutes. I get down on the big screen downstairs and I turn it on, and I'm 16 minutes in, and then an ad comes up. Okay, because you know how some people post all these YouTube ads get out there. Well, it's some 25-minute message from some messianic group. So I had to give William a call. He said, I've been dealing with this for years. He says these messianics, the algorithms on social media and broadcast, they just, these are religious. Let's throw them all together. And they don't realize. Right. So they're literally, I had to have a chat with William over that. And he says, yeah, what are you going to do? It's either I shut off the broadcast, the ads, or you leave them on. And if you leave them on, he says, the Messianics just bombard the show. It's terrible. Right. So I don't turn them on. I know the Noah Hyde World Center here does turn on some ads sometimes as well, but I don't go for that. So I know how much we pay you to do these shows, and it's, Rabbi, you're such a blessing.
That's why I'm getting rich. That's why, we're buying up property here in Israel. So don't worry. let it come in.
Well, folks, you can always support Rabbi in his. You can go to his site, orthodoxconversion.com. Feel free to stand by. Hey, we had somebody on here tonight. Somebody on the YouTube, Rabbi, was saying, well, they wanted to consider conversion. They're just having trouble connecting with somebody in Las Vegas. And I'm thinking, Las Vegas is Sin City. Is there even a synagogue in Las Vegas? I wouldn't know, but
there are a bunch. There are definitely a bunch in Las Vegas.
Something on if you can check the guy's name out in the YouTube stream, maybe you can make a connection. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe you can point him in the right direction one way or another. I know you've shared a lot with us today, so I'm going to sign off because I know my wife's waiting, and I want to thank you for sharing. I want to thank everybody for being with us. So we're tentatively aiming for a couple of weeks after Passover. We hope you all have a wonderful Passover. And until then, we're going to sign off. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, folks.